and welcome to the March 26th, 2024 City Council Work Session meeting. Our meetings are public, and you're welcome to join us in person or by watching from the Council's agenda page, Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable. This is a work session meeting during which there's no public comment. Please join us tonight during our 7 p.m. formal meeting to share your comments. We, of course, welcome your feedback anytime by mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84114-5476, by email at council.comments@slcgov.com, or via our 24-hour phone comment line 801-535-7654. Comments we receive on agenda topics are shared with council members and posted to our website, slccouncil.com. We will now begin our work session. The first item on the agenda is updates from the administration. I see that we've got Josh Raboyo here and Andrew Johnston. Gentlemen.
Okay. Good afternoon, council members. Next slide, please. So I'll be giving the update community engagement highlights. We refer people to the slc.gov/feedback page for updated surveys and ways to engage with the city. Next slide, please. From our planning division, regulations on gas stations near bodies of water passed the planning, is on the Planning Commission agenda for April 10th. Prohibition on demolition of housing for parking, Planning Commission recommended adoption on February 28th. From our Public Lands Department, geo bond projects for Cottonwood Park and the Peace Labyrinth are now open. You can go to slc.gov/feedback to view those surveys and engage in that. In those projects that are starting public engagement now. Next slide. Some more updates from our transportation division. 600 700 North reconstruction. There's a public open house this Thursday, March 28th from 4:30 to 6:30 at Backman Elementary. For the Livable Streets program, engagement for zones 5 through 9 is wrapping up with meetings this week and next, and we'll provide a final concept design to engineering for construction design. Those zones include Ballpark, Jordan Meadows, Fair Park, Central City, and Poplar Grove neighborhoods. Zones for our engineering for zones 2 through 4 are at 40% design, and zones 10 through 15 will be next on the engagement schedule. You can see shared a map of the zones for Livable Streets, and that can be accessed on the Livable Streets webpage through the feedback page. On the Sugar House Safe Side Streets project, is also ongoing. A traffic circle in the intersection of Ramona Avenue and 1000 East is anticipated to begin construction this summer. A traffic circle is under design currently. Other elements are being considered to finish out the project, including a yield sign and Garfield Avenue and McClellan Street, and upgrades to the traffic circle at Hollywood Avenue and 10th East. Next slide. From our office, the Love Your Block team is assisting in planning for Earth Day on April 20th, planning service projects for that day. They are partnering with civil enforcement to address and resolve violations such as outside storage, overgrown vegetation, and other violations that can be addressed through service projects on Earth Day. The mini grant applications for Love Your Block remain open through the 31st, March 31st. The Community Action Fund remains open until September 31st or until funds have been expended. Neighborhoods eligible include Glendale, Poplar Grove, Fair Park, Jordan Meadows, West Point, Rose Park, Guadalupe, and Ballpark. And more information on those funds can be found on the Love Your Block website through the Mayor's Office page. And then on the right, on the other part of the slide here, our office hour schedule for community outreach. For District 1, will be at Culture Coffee, new coffee shop in Fair Park, on April 17th from 4:30 to 6:30 or from 9 to 11 that morning. Next slide, please. Events, so event season's back. We'll be sharing, bringing attention to events being planned in the city that might be of interest to the council or the public. These are not an all-inclusive list of all events happening in the city, but are collected mostly from ACE-funded events, city-sponsored events, and other publicly permitted events. And so there's the list right there over the next couple of weeks coming up in April. We encourage anyone before attending these events to confirm the information with organizers as things may change and the city does not manage these events. That's all I have for community outreach. If there's any questions, otherwise I'll go to Andrew.
Thank you, Council. Next slide, please. Maybe I'll start with a little game for you all. Can anybody pick out on this slide what is different from last week? It's a tough one, I have to admit.
Are we more full at the shelters? I think it was 98 last time, wasn't it?
No. Good guess, though. Yes, that is true. That's a change. There's also something higher up in the encampment impact mitigation area. Otherwise, it's a very similar slide from last week, if you remember correctly. Still very high capacity and use of the shelters, which seems they're running well and it's helpful. The encampment impact mitigation work is today, actually, and tomorrow, I believe, in the industrial area, mostly District 2, I believe, this week. And then rapid intervention is also a lot on the west side with those areas identified, as well as Liberty Park. The resource fair that was just mentioned a second ago on the 12th of April at Pioneer Park, and then the hygiene kit drive we talked about last week, but yes, did include a new Amazon wish list for anybody who's interested in making a one-touch donation to this project. They could use all the help they could get as far as donations and also sign-ups to help with the assembly party on the 2nd. So there's the links if you or the public are interested, and you can forward this on as well through your own individual avenues. Next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about some basics and scheduling for this year as far as emergency shelter and preparation. We did talk a little bit about the state OHS Office of Homeless Services is seeking to keep as many winter shelter beds as possible open May through October. That depends on funding. That also depends on local jurisdictional actions. And then the MVP in Sandy continues to increase in capacity. I think they were over 100 people last check, so they're doing a good job in ramping up there. The winter planning for next year has already started. We haven't finished this winter officially yet, but by state statute, they need to have the projected number of beds needed and the available funds, and that's a state funding issue, by the end of this month. So there's some meetings happening right now to talk about what do we know for this year, this winter, about the need, what do we know for the funding, and then match that up with the task force going forward this summer. By August 1st, just like last year, the local task force for this county needs to have a plan submitted to the state, and then the State Office of Homeless Services has 2 weeks to accept or reject that plan and move forward on operations to begin as soon as October 1st of this winter. So that gives you a basic layout of the summer. It's pretty similar to last year, but just so you know, things are happening already for next winter. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Any questions?
Thank you, Andrew. Council? Looks like we're letting you both off easy today. Thank you so much for being here. All right, we're going to move on now to the 300 West Corridor and Central Point Station Area Plan. Nick Tarbit's coming to the table with Daniel Echeverria, Jessica Garrow, and Marianne Stuck. Thank you all for being here.
I'll give just a quick intro and then hand it off to Daniel. This is a mid to later update from planning staff and the consultants on the 300 West Corridor and Central Point Station Area Plan. The council received its first briefing on this June of last year, and this is simply an opportunity for the council to receive the update and ask any questions that you may have about the project to this point. With that, Daniel.
All right, I think Nick well covered it, but again, we were here in June of last year to give you an overview of the public process and the plan priorities. Since that time, we've done some public engagement, and we are finally at the point where we are developing a draft plan based on that outreach that we did. So we're here again to check in with the council and get your input on the draft concepts, the draft framework, and answer any questions you might have on the material so far. So with that, I will hand it over to our consultant team from Design Workshop.
Great. Thank you. We are so excited to be with you today. My name is Jessica Garrow. I'm a principal with Design Workshop, and Marianne Stuk is joining me. She's our project manager. We've been working with our subconsultant partners, MHTN, for about the last year on this planning process. So we're excited for sharing an update with you. Next slide. So this image just shows the study area. We are working on a corridor plan for 300 West, as well as the Central Point Station area plan. So you can see the area in red is the primary study area that's zoomed in on the right. Next slide. Currently, the area is a regional commercial and industrial place that includes big box retail and development patterns that really focus on car. They're very auto-centric. With some of the changes in the area, including the 300 West bike path, streetscape improvements, and some new housing, there are changes happening in the area, and so it's a really important time to begin planning and thinking about the future for the area. Next slide. We've completed a robust set of community engagement, which I'll discuss in the next slides, but based off of that community engagement, we've developed a draft vision for the area that reimagines it as one that incorporates mixed-use development, incorporates new public spaces, additional green areas and open spaces, and increases the mix of housing types in the area. Really importantly, the vision also focuses on maintaining existing businesses. It creates some ideas for what the future might look like and the types of uses that we might want to see in the future. But we really want to support existing businesses that are thriving in that area, and the plan accommodates that. Next slide. So this is a timeline of our process to date. You can see we are currently in engagement window 4. It's our final engagement window. We have been working with the community since May of last year, really trying to dig in and understand what the vision for the area is. So we've completed focus groups as well as extensive community one-on-one interviews. We've held 2 different surveys online to date and open house and pop-up event in the fall. From all of that engagement, we have identified some principles and started to craft a draft plan. Weather dependent, we will have an open house tonight in the area so that we can, again, hear from the community, and we also have a survey with some of the draft plan ideas to continue hearing from the community. Next slide. This next slide summarizes the engagement thus far. So you can see we've had significant response to those 2 online engagement opportunities, 400 responses to our first survey, and over 700 responses to a social pinpoint engagement where we asked people to identify different things that they like, areas that they want to change within the area. So from all of the engagement that we've had, we've heard strong support for creating a green, vibrant, and economically diverse community. We've heard strong interest in mixed-use development and a desire for more parks and open space. We've heard goals to beautify the community, address safety, and really elevate the quality of future development in the area. Also a recognition that the area does provide some affordable commercial and warehouse space that should continue into the future. And then we've also heard a strong desire for increased density and additional housing opportunities. Next slide. So from all of this engagement, we've identified 4 different project principles. The first is about promoting a walkable district that supports various types of mobility. So really creating a pedestrian-friendly corridor that supports different ways of getting around and offers alternatives to the auto-centric development that exists today. The second is encouraging mixed-use redevelopment along the corridor to create a more vibrant and attractive place, really prioritizing ground floor active uses. The third principle is to create a system of both public and private green spaces. This need for green space is something we heard over and over in the community engagement. So it was really important that that be included as a project principle. And then our fourth principle is increasing density around the station for a variety of housing options. Next slide. This illustrates on the next slide the proposed plan, and I'm going to turn it over to Marianne to run through some of the different ideas and character areas.
Thank you. So yeah, what you see on the screen is a 3D diagram that shows kind of the full potential development scenario for this area. The idea is that this becomes a framework that helps guide change in the future. And what you're seeing there doesn't mean necessarily this will happen. It might happen as different property owners might be interested in redeveloping. So the idea is that this guides them to create a more walkable and mixed-use neighborhood. The focus is around creating mixed-use development along the 300 West corridor and closer to the Central Point station, and also establishing new connections both to the north to connect to the ballpark area and to the east to connect the existing neighborhoods on that side. You will also see that it explores the potential of a linear park or green area along the tracks line that could also become an important connector north-south in the future. A new plaza space that is proposed along 2100 South that will be framed by high-density residential development and first-floor commercial uses. And the idea is to create a transit-oriented area around this portion of the site that could help the city meet HTRC, affordable housing requirements, if that is something that is desired, and will become also a new gateway to 300 West. Next slide, please. As we developed the plan, we thought about it in 6 different character areas or districts, and this helped us understand how land use composition could vary slightly, the scale of the buildings related to height and density is not the same all throughout the area, and also how these buildings interact with the public realm. So the first character area that you see here on your screen is the Central Point TOD area. It creates a high density development node along the intersection of 300 West and 2100 South. The proximity to the station here presents an opportunity to incorporate a variety of housing options. It could include affordable housing with easy access to transit. The idea is that the first floor would be commercial uses that create an active pedestrian area, and also think about improved pedestrian crossings at 300 West and West Temple for better connectivity to the station. The buildings are anticipated to include podium parking or parking garages with green spaces and amenities on top of them. And a new linear plaza is included along the north side of 2100 South between 300 West and West Temple to promote pedestrian active uses and also connectivity to the station. Next slide, please. This image illustrates a little bit what the public realm and kind of the interaction of building and pedestrian sidewalk could look like. You can see that we are showing buildings set back a little bit further from the existing property line, and that could be a requirement as redevelopment happens in that area to allow for a larger circulation sidewalk and also amenity zone where the first floor uses could expand into the sidewalk and create a more active environment. We're also thinking about buildings when they're a little bit higher that they would step back as you go up. So here you can see that step back happening after the second floor, just to make sure that, again, the pedestrian environment is welcoming and you don't have like tall buildings coming all the way down to the street level. Next slide, please. The character area that you're seeing right now is the area along 300 West. The idea is to create a new edge along the corridor where buildings are closer to the street, high to medium density, and also ground floor active uses. Most buildings in this area are intended to be mixed use, and they will have requirements, so the ground floor uses are also inviting for pedestrians. They should be located, as I said, close to the public right-of-way to help define the scale and the environment along 300 West. And the idea is that the existing bike path would also extend to the south. Next slide, please. This is again showing a little bit what the character of the area could be from a pedestrian perspective. You can see there are some taller buildings on the left side of your screen, but they're also stepping back. The idea is to try to incorporate street trees in many of these areas as much as possible as the right-of-way allows us, and create an environment that is more walkable than what is currently there. Next slide, please. The area that you see right now, we're calling it a transition edge, and this is where the new linear park would happen. The idea is that this area helps us step down and scale down gradually towards the residential neighborhoods to the east, and then that this new linear green element or park could help provide a much needed green space in the area, but also an important connection from north to south. Next slide, please. This is again showing what that could look like. We have talked with UTA, and they're very supportive of the idea of the potential trail or park along the tracks line. We have not gotten into detailed studies of what the right-of-way of UTA would allow, so this might also require that redevelopment at that area allows for a larger setback of those new buildings to make space for that new amenity. Next slide, please. The area around 1700 South is also one that we understand as a potential node that can provide an opportunity for a mixed use of commercial and residential uses with higher density, a little bit taller buildings, also ideally with commercial uses on the lower level. So the buildings that you see like as orange are mixed-use buildings. Those would have commercial or active uses on the first floor, and the yellow buildings are just residential. There are some opportunities also for commercial-only buildings in this area, but the focus should be on residential and mixed uses. Another thing that we have been working on as part of this proposed plan is to establish new street connections to ideally create smaller blocks as the area redevelop. A lot of the blocks are really large, so if these new developments can extend some of the streets or connect some of the existing streets, it will become a much more walkable area altogether. Next slide, please. We're calling this one the Creative Industrial Office Commercial Edge. So it could include a variety of uses, but the idea is that it would be mostly focused towards commercial uses, light industrial, maybe some type of creative district with office uses too, that create this transition between the mixed-use residential areas towards the interstate and help us also create like a buffer between those two areas. The idea is that some of the industrial buildings could be repurposed. They could also allow for redevelopment and new job creation. You can see that we are showing large existing retailers like Costco and Home Depot in this one scenario staying, but if we move to the next slide, please. You can see that we're also thinking about what could happen if those large retailers would at some point move out of the area and how those blocks could redevelop and become part of this more smaller grid and more walkable district. And then next slide, please. And finally, this is our low-scale residential district that is mostly maintaining existing residential areas that are on the east of the tracks line with some opportunities for maybe ADUs, townhouses, and a little bit of infill, but very careful with the scale they're maintaining, what the existing neighborhoods look like. Next slide. Okay.
Great, so this diagram identifies some of the potential circulation improvements that we would anticipate in the area. So key pedestrian crossings across 17 South and 21 South. We have heard some feedback about potentially desire for an additional track station on 1700 South. So that's something that we've talked with UTA about and could be contemplated in the future. Also, really importantly, wanting to continue the bike path on 300 West to the south. And as Mariana mentioned, thinking about some additional east-west connections as development might occur in the future. Next slide. And we wanted to end with focus on open space. Again, this is something we've heard a lot about in the community engagement, a desire for more green spaces, open spaces, public spaces in the area. The city does not own significant land in the area, as you know, and so what we would contemplate is that there's a mix of public streetscape improvements as well as private open space. We would also anticipate, as part of these mixed-use developments, that there might be upper-level patios, decks, green areas to support the residents who are there, and again, providing some additional green space for the neighborhood. Next slide. And I mentioned tonight we've got an open house in the neighborhood. This is a link to our story map, which includes the ideas we've discussed today, information about the draft plan, and then there's also a link here to take the survey, which will be open for another few weeks while we are waiting for comment from the community before we finalize the draft plan. And with that, I think we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council? Councilmember Mono.
Thanks. I've been really excited about this plan since the first time we heard about it, and just knowing that it's been coming along. This is an important part of my district. I have a couple thoughts that, well, I support walkability, and I think that the street sections that you showed are aspirational and nice. I wonder about the interface between, like, say, the backside of Costco and a building that's next door to it, because in reality we're going to get maybe one building that adheres to this new code at a time, and I'm having a hard time imagining that, and I'm not sure if there needs to be a different type of, I mean, they're great street engaged projects that you kind of showed in those little vignettes, but I don't know that I've been to a city where I've seen that type of a project next door to a big box retailer, and the reality is we're probably going to get that condition, and I wonder if we need to think about it a little bit more nuanced than what is just good urban design by the book, right? It's like, what is good urban design next to a big box retailer? Because we know probably not all of them will leave. So that's just one thought. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's okay that it sort of happens piecemeal and we just are planning for the future. I could be convinced either way. I do want to just communicate what some of the business constituents that have reached out to me have said, both about this and the other part of the ballpark station area plan that we've already adopted, is that I'm not sure the zoning tool that allows this, but there are businesses that would like to expand and potentially like to expand in where they're located, but would be non-conforming uses. So I don't know if there's a way we need to say you can expand your legally non-conforming use more than what we typically would allow in other zones, or how to do that. I just know that there's some businesses that are saying, you know, we might move, but we might like to stay here. And if we do, but we want to grow, then are we stuck? But the thing I'm most excited about is the trail along the tracks line. And I think that that's a huge opportunity for us to get green space in a part of the city that really needs it. Your image for that showed, it looked almost like there were a couple walls on either side. Can you talk to me about what those are? In the vignette, the street section. And can we get rid of them, I guess, is the question.
I think some of it is related to safety with the TRAX line. Do you have any?
Can we go to page 14 of the slide deck?
Yeah, I think those are just shown in the rendering. This is very high level conceptual. Like we said, we haven't really gotten into more technical conversations with UTA and what that would look like. I think to your point, they're just shown there kind of for a safety reason, but I don't think that's necessarily how it needs to look like. I think once this gets developed further and there is really an understanding of the space that UTA has within their right-of-way, because we don't even understand exactly what that is right now, I think we can start thinking about what this would really look like, and I agree with you, yeah, we shouldn't have.
And I don't know if this is a job for right now while we're doing the stationary plan or when we start to implement the zoning, but I would like to advocate for as much even like required things as we can for developments that front that to both, like their setback has to be open to the public or something. I don't know when it becomes a taking and all that, but I would like to really push this idea as far as possible, because it could be a really, right now it's a barrier between the commercial and the residential parts. It could bring those two together, but it also could provide that really deeply needed green space. So that's the thing I'm the most excited about, and I want to push it as far as possible.
Great, thanks. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to our state legislative briefing. I'm going to welcome up Angela Price. I see Dave Quayle. Do we expect Kate to join us? Should we wait a few minutes? We're about like 11 minutes ahead of schedule. Would you like us to wait and see if Kate comes?
That's up to you. We were going to present Kate's parents' moral support.
Okay, then let's go. If that's how it goes, come on up. All right, everyone's heroes for this legislative season, Angela Price and Dave Quayle.
I love that. Agenda this evening. I'm Angela Price, the Legislative Affairs Director.
I'm Dave Quayle. I am a senior city attorney assigned to the Legislative Affairs Division.
So we have probably several hours of content here, but we're going to wrap that into 30 minutes. So I just want to caveat that we're going to fly through these pretty quickly. There's a lot of bills that have an impact on the city, and so happy to come back and do another briefing or break into small groups for you guys if you have specific questions on any legislation. We pulled a few of the key bills, but there's certainly a lot more out there that impacts the city. So just know that we're analyzing all of those, and we'll be providing that impact or those summaries to all of our departments. But just know that this isn't your only opportunity to ask us questions. Next slide, please. So we had a record session both for the city and for the state. Almost 1,500 bill files, 934 bills introduced, and 591 bills passed. We tracked 282 bills in the city, which is 30% of the bills that were filed. And we had a reduction in bills tracked from the 2023 to 2024 session by 30%. If you guys remember, that was one of the goals of the Legislative Affairs Division, is to really be more intentional about the bills that we're tracking as a city. So we're really excited that that number has gone down. We amended over 50 bills, and I'll say that this number isn't completely accurate because we had numerous bills that were held in committee that we don't have a way to track within our Salesforce. So I would say this number is probably closer to 75 to 100. We had 44 bills that were ranked as high priority bills for the city. And we had over 1,500 comment solicitations. And then last week, Governor Cox vetoed 7 bills. I also just want to call out, I heard a statistic in our finance debrief yesterday that finance commented on had over 2,000 comments on bills. So I just want to put that into perspective for you guys. As you know, they're working through the budget process right now. So their team is not only planning for the budget, but also participating very heavily in the legislative session. So I just wanted to give that additional statistic. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk a little bit to you guys about the dynamics of the legislative session. So we had 5 kind of key policy pillars going into the session that were our proactive lens as a city, or things that we really wanted to focus on. And those were local control, housing and homelessness, transportation, energy and sustainability, water, and the Great Salt Lake. And so those were kind of the main lens that we looked at bills through. But as you guys know, we can never predict what is going to come at us. And so we certainly had bills that impacted us that weren't in those main categories. It is really challenging to kill bills. And do you want to come up? It's really challenging for us to kill bills, and so our work in the interim is more important now than ever. There were numerous bills that we were able to amend thanks to the good work of Kate Bradshaw and our lobby team and our partners like the Utah League of Cities and Towns, Utah Association of Counties, and others. The other piece that I want to show you on this graph here is you can see that before week 1, we had almost 450 bills numbered. That, again, alludes to the fact of how important the work is that we do right now. We heard time and time again how data matters. I can tell you so many examples of the work that our city team did, our departments did, of providing us really great data that we were then able to use to be able to shift policy and shift the direction of bills. So our analysis and our data work that we do in the interim is so incredibly important for the work that we do at the Capitol. Next slide, please. So we have numerous bills, like I said, that we're going to discuss with you today, and I'm going to just kind of hit on these at a high level because there's so much content here. But HB 548 alcohol amendments, this is the big omnibus alcohol bill. And a few points that I want to make to you here is you can see that we are going to be able to increase the full service license and bar licenses, which will certainly have a really big impact on our businesses here within the city. There's now portability inside hotels and resorts, which is a really big deal for our conventions and our hotels here within the city. And then we also have a proximity exemption for our downtown revitalization zone. And I'll speak a little bit more about that here in a minute, but that's tied to the what we call the NHL bill and specific to the potential revitalization happening around downtown area around the Delta Center. Next slide, please. HB 491 data privacy amendments. This bill is really impactful for the city because it requires us to look at how we share personal data, and that can be anything from how we take public comment during public meetings to our land use and building permit applications. So I know IMS has requested an FTE specifically to work on the implementation of this bill and other data privacy requests that we, or code compliance that we have with the state. This requires us to report any data breaches to the state. It has a annual report that we have to provide to the state. It states that we can't sell or share personal data and that we can only collect data that's needed for the processing of a application or to conduct business. So our IMS team, our recorder's office, is going to be working really closely on this bill, making sure that we're in compliance and that we have policies and procedures in place. Next slide, please. And I'll pass this over to Dave.
So SB 91, Local Government Officers Compensation Amendments. This is a bill that now requires city councils to hold a separate single-item public hearing as part of the budget process to take comments on any, quote, compensation increase for an executive municipal officer before those increases can be included in a final or amended final budget. Just a couple of things to note there. Compensation increase, that is defined. It means salary, budgeted bonuses, and incentives. So that would be something along the lines of, Jane Doe will get a $10,000 bonus if they reduce workers' comp claims by X amount. I don't think it's common, but the sponsor wanted that in there. Vehicle allowances and deferred salary. That is what is included in compensation. Executive municipal officers. So that is defined as your chief administrative officer, a deputy chief administrative officer, the city attorney, department heads, and deputy department heads. It sounds like a lot, but initially this bill included every employee of the government employer would have to have their compensation increased. So we were able to reduce that down to this list, which is essentially just the folks that are currently listed in statute as not having merit protections under the law. So that is how we got to that list. A couple of other things. This public hearing is not required before the increase can be provided. That was negotiated into the bill based on the concept of if you have a great employee and they come to you and say, hey, I have a job offer from another entity, the city should have the flexibility, or the government employer, to make a counter offer to try and keep this key employee without having to go through the whole public hearing budget amendment process. That increase would then be dealt with at the next budget opening. And the last kind of logistical piece on that is that the public hearing can be held in the same meeting as the general budget hearing. So you could gavel out of the public hearing on the general budget, gavel into the compensation public hearing, vice versa, and then vote on the budget. So you can expect that this year. And I guess next slide. That is one I will handle as well. HB 261, that is Equal Opportunity Amendments, most commonly known as the DEI bill. This is a massive bill, kind of in terms of content, length, and policy impact. So I could probably take 45 minutes talking about just this bill. But I think Angela would kill me, and maybe all of you would as well. So there really needs to be a thorough unpacking of this bill to assess all the impacts of where the rubber meets the road. But I'd like to hit a couple of high-level points on this bill, just so you're aware of them. I think the best way to think about this bill is really almost as three separate bills, because it implements 3 new sections to Utah Code. It adopts 3 new statutes. The first is 6725-105. That is new, and the main requirement of that new section of law is going to be a prohibition on requiring, requesting, soliciting, or compelling prohibited submissions before you can take any kind of employment action. So promotion, raise, termination, anything like that, hiring. Now, the devil's going to be in the details of that definition, which is pretty dense. And my understanding from kind of negotiations during the session, as well as initial department discussions, is Salt Lake doesn't really ask for that type of information, never has, so that shouldn't be too big of an impact, but we are still unpacking that with human resources and others. The second large category is 6727-106, again new, and what that bars is government employers requiring prohibited training. Prohibited training, again, kind of comes back to that word required. It's defined to mean a mandatory instructional program and related materials that the government employer requires to have been taken. So the keywords there are obviously required and mandatory, and they also connect back to the biggest definition in this bill, which is discriminatory practice. That's a multi-page definition with a lot of nuance that we really need to sit down with HR and figure out what trainings we have, how they could be interpreted, what required and mandatory means in very specific contexts. So that is, stay tuned, that's ongoing, but be aware that we are unpacking that in the context of our training. And the last section is 6727-107. It's the shortest new requirement, but potentially the most impactful. All it says is a government employer may not engage in prohibited discriminatory practices. So it's that same definition. The reason I say it could be the most impactful is it goes beyond just trainings. So it will deal with policies, procedures, practices, programs, offices. So it could go much further, but that will be unpacked in that same process of breaking down that definition. So I think next slide. I will take that one as well. HB 257, sex-based designations for privacy, anti-bullying, and women's opportunities. This is probably most commonly known as the transgender bathroom bill. And it really has two distinct components, one that relates to public schools, and another that relates to publicly owned and controlled facilities. That second portion is what will directly impact the city. Now, despite what's widely been reported, this is not as to the city as a owner or controller of a facility, a bathroom bill. That's how it was reported, but that is not how it is written. The way it is written is that publicly owned and controlled facilities are regulated in terms of changing rooms, not bathrooms. So a transgender individual can only use a changing room in a government-owned or controlled facility that either aligns with their birth sex or with the sex listed on a legally amended birth certificate, and that corresponds with a primary sex change surgery as well. Now, what is a changing room? It's not a bathroom. A changing room is going to be a dressing room, fitting room, locker room, shower room that's meant for multiple people to use at the same time. So what was just kind of repeatedly shorthand reference was just a locker room. Now, what that means is that in our general city facilities like City Hall here or other government buildings, individuals can still use the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. And why that's a big deal is this bill is without a doubt a difficult bill. But I do want to point out that in earlier iterations of what was passed, this would and was drafted to be a bathroom bill for all government-owned facilities. It would regulate who could use what bathrooms. Now, through negotiations with partners, amendments that we proposed, amendments that other people proposed, we were able to evolve this bill into something that will have less of an impact on people's lives on a daily basis. I think people interact with bathrooms much more than they do changing rooms as defined in this statute. So while it's not good, this bill is better, and I think the work that the entire Salt Lake City team, from departments to the council to the mayor's office to everyone, really did help improve this bill and the impacts it will have on lives of residents. So next slide.
Thank you, Dave. HB 562, Utah Fair Park Area Investment and Restoration District. This also was a really big bill for the city and has a pretty profound impact on the west side. This bill establishes the district, the Fair Park District, and establishes a statewide interest. The boundaries of the area are the State Fair Park site, state-owned lands, the Rocky Mountain Power site, a portion of the Jordan River, and some private property within that area. It's important to note that the State Tax Commission by June 1st will have to establish the full boundary of the district. So as it's currently drafted within the bill, that boundary is really based on a postal code. So that will be happening here in the next couple of months. This bill does a lot of things, as you guys know, and is a pretty long bill. It was almost 140 pages. It's very dense policy. So we are still working on understanding the timelines and the impacts to the city and how we move forward on the development of this. But the big pieces are that the tax collection will start October of this year. The city will retain 25% of our property tax, but all of the other taxes for that area will go to the district. It allows for the district to issue bonds on the public market. It provides provisions related to municipal services and private public safety. And then it also establishes requirements for the end of this year for land use vesting and adjustments to the redevelopment agency project boundary. We are working a lot internally on this bill and with our partners on the implementation of this and the redevelopment that's going to happen on the west side. So know that there's a lot more to come here as well. Next slide. SB 272, Capital City Reinvestment Zone Amendments, another really big bill for the city. I feel like I can say that about so many of the bills that passed this year, but it really was, I think, a historical legislative session for Salt Lake City. This bill creates the revitalization zone for utilization of sales tax revenue. It allows the city to levy a 0.5% sales and use tax in the project area, and allows us to establish a project area of up to 100 acres in downtown Salt Lake. It requires a franchise agreement to be tied to the NBA or NHL. It requires various different reports that we need to provide to the state, and then also a state board. And it also allows for the state board to recommend a prosecutor pro tem for the project area. Again, a lot of work to be done on this bill. We do have a September 1st deadline if we are going to enact a franchise agreement and establish a project area for the utilization of that 0.5% sales and use tax.
Madam Chair, may I ask what a prosecutor pro tem is?
That's, go ahead.
So a prosecutor pro tem, the idea behind that is it would just essentially be a temporary or kind of interim appointed prosecutor. So the idea behind the provision is that if there is a belief that the crimes are not being prosecuted well enough in this reinvestment zone, the legislature can request the Supreme Court appoint a separate individual to prosecute crimes within that district other than the Salt Lake County
We are talking
District
about
Attorney.
criminal offenses that occur in this boundary.
That is correct.
And I, just from a process perspective, this was something that was added to the legislation on, what was it, the last day of the session, maybe the last afternoon of the session?
It was added at about 11:15 on the last
And
day of the
the
session.
city was not
that
aware,
evening.
at least
Yeah.
we were not made aware of it, so.
Yeah, we were not part of the negotiations on this. We did not know about this, and it was added at the very end.
That
Kate, if you
explains
wanna
why I
add
didn't know
something
about
there.
it. Thank you.
Well, the color, just to add some additional color commentary to it, there's clearly some concerns among the legislature about where the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office is placing the majority of their resources. And it got used as a bit of a political messaging tool. Because there's other provisions related to how that office is going to keep track of their time in 15-minute increments, so that there can be an accounting for how they're allocating those resources. So it had a target, and the intended target was not Salt Lake City.
Just it's obviously not our job to answer this question, but were there any concerns raised about whether that's legal?
There was a robust floor debate
Very robust floor debate.
about this, and some of the political and emotional issues that were the drivers of this were very much discussed on the House floor where this change was made. And, you know, there was kind of a robust defense made about some of those claims, and then unfortunately there's an individual that also feels like they have been poorly treated in their criminal case by the Salt Lake County District Attorney, and so that person's personal case also played out on the floor of the House as part of this discussion. Again, not aimed at Salt Lake, aimed at the county DA's office, but it was one of those fabulous last night of the session surprise insertions into a bill that wasn't really about this bill.
Yeah, it just seems odd that like every resident in every county gets to select and vote for their county attorney or DA, except for the people who live in this district. And if they were to exercise the pro tem option.
And I would just add, there is a constitutional provision that would authorize this. I don't believe it's ever been used. It's fairly obscure and surprised a lot of people that, frankly, it exists. But there is, I believe, some support for this action.
And obviously, I'm not trying to open up this discussion, but I'm just wondering, in my mind, if right now we have an agreement where our city prosecutor's office is being run by the district attorney's office. If that weren't the case, would the special pro tem DA, would that extend to what the city typically would charge, which would be Class A misdemeanors and below? You don't have to answer right now, but something to, can you look into that?
That is something that's been thought of. There is a difference between, like you said, justice courts, Bs and belows and As above, and the typical jurisdictional difference between city prosecutors and county prosecutors or district attorneys. So it's something that we are aware of and will continue to look into.
Okay, thanks.
Council, any other questions on this?
Okay, next slide. Sorry, we're almost done. HB 502, critical infrastructure and mining. This was referred to as the Parley's Canyon bill. Although it touched many other areas, this is another bill that we are really grateful for the work of our partners. This would have had a really big impact on the city from our land use, would have required us to provide water outside of our jurisdiction. So we are really grateful for the work that happened on this, that got this bill to be a study of really looking at what critical infrastructure and mining needs we have within the state, what resources are available, how we can mitigate any impacts, what transportation and land use looks like. So this study does need to be completed by November 1st of this year, and then reported to the legislature no later than January of next year. There are spaces within the study composition that allow for 2 city representatives from a county of the first, second, or third class, along with partners like Wasatch Front Regional Council, who is our MPO, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and so this is a pretty wide group of people that will be involved in this study, and so we're hoping to be heavily involved in those discussions, as this would have a pretty big impact on our air and water land use here within the city. Next slide. HB 298, homeless services amendments. This bill, there were several homelessness bills. I just chose to focus on this one, but it changes the Homeless Council to the 11-member Utah Homeless Services Board. It provides an opportunity provides Salt Lake City an opportunity to have Mayor Mendenhall or our mayor be one of those 11 members. It has a statewide strategic plan focused on personal accountability. It creates the Shelter City Advisory Board, which provides an opportunity for all of the shelter cities to work together then to feed up to that Utah Homeless Services Board. And then it establishes new reporting requirements for the Office of Homeless Services. We're grateful for this bill as it again kind of furthers that collaboration that's been happening between the state, the county, and the cities. Next slide. And then I just wanted to point out the the homeless appropriations that we received this year. Next slide. There we go. This was the biggest investment that we've seen in homelessness from the legislature, and we're really grateful for Governor Cox and his leadership in this this policy area, and then also for the legislature, who had a pretty slim budget this year, but we still saw this record investment. One of the areas that will impact us the most is receiving that $2.5 million ongoing shelter mitigation fund. That doesn't come close to what we touch here within the city, what we spend on mitigation, but it certainly helps ease that burden. We saw an appropriation for Home Court, which is a diversion program to help people get out of the criminal justice system, $25 million for low barrier shelter, and then over $11 million for the statewide homelessness support system. Last slide. And then just quickly on the next steps, I first want to express my gratitude to the City Council and to the Mayor, not only for your support of the creation of the Legislative Affairs Division, but for your unwavering support during the session. I know it adds a lot of extra work and bandwidth to all of us, and so I just am really appreciative of all of the work that the council, the mayor, and all of our departments do. We are as successful as we are during the legislative session because we are a cohesive unit. We have one voice, and we have an amazing group of experts here in the city, and I just can't really extend my gratitude enough to all of you and to our departments for the work that you do. Our lobby team is exceptional, and just so grateful for the work that they do for the city during those 45 days. We all say goodbye to our families. We basically roll out our sleeping bags in the rotunda if we actually sleep, and so just a huge amount of gratitude to the city family for that. We are meeting with all of the departments. We're about halfway through and just doing a debrief on how the session went for them. We have started analyzing almost all 290 bills to understand the impact to the city and what next steps might be needed, such as ordinance amendments, reports, fiscal impacts. So know that you guys will see that report, and then each department will have that as well. There's going to be numerous internal policy working groups on various bills that we've identified for here today and others. And then we are working on our 2025 policy priority development. Know that you guys will be seeing that hopefully sometime in May. And then, as I've alluded, the interim committees and working groups are so incredibly important. So we are going to be plugging in our experts as much as we possibly can into every possible working group to ensure that Salt Lake City's interests are being represented. We really want to work to build relationships with legislators and with our Utah congressional delegation, our community partners, and then lastly, field trips and stories. These are things that I continuously heard at the Capitol. We heard when we were in DC. We're doing so much great work here in Salt Lake City, and we want to be able to showcase that to the legislature and to our federal congressional delegation. So if you guys are doing fun stuff in your districts, please let us know so that we can invite our elected officials to attend those events and see the work that we're doing. So with that, open to any questions that you might have. Kate, I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Because I channel Angela, I want to express gratitude for the creation of this new division, and it made the work of the external lobby team go much better and smoother to have Angela and Dave at the Capitol. Angela, of course, is well known up at the Capitol and with the League of Cities and Towns, but it was impressive to see the way Dave was able to integrate into the League family and quickly become a trusted resource for working on a variety of different bills and amendments. And also gratitude for Cindy Lou's amazing bill tracking system, which quite frankly is the best thing out there on the market, and maybe should be spun off for a commercial enterprise.
Thank you all. I will continue the gratitude. This was a monster of a session where it felt like everything was important at all times in equal measure, and prioritizing, let alone sifting through, seemed impossible. So thank you. I repent in dust and ashes for thinking that, we didn't need to fund the department fully initially. You proved me completely wrong. Thank you so much for the work that you did. Council, I'll open it up to you. Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for all the work. I appreciate it, as been stated. My question on House Bill 502, the Parley's Canyon Mine, it says the study is completed by November. I think that's very quick turnaround. What's our position and role in that study as a city or as a body?
That's a great question. So we have actually had our team reach out. We're hoping that we may be able to directly participate in that study as one of the 2 cities that are enacted in the legislation to be in the study group. And we certainly will be working closely with our partners on Wasatch Front Regional Council, Utah League of Cities and Towns, Utah Association of Counties, and others to participate as closely as we can, as that study will have a really big impact on Salt Lake City.
That timing is quick, but it's based entirely on the legislative needs and calendar. November is the last interim meetings of the cycle. They want to report back from their study so that it's potentially available for action, whatever the results of the study determine for the 2025 session.
Councilwoman Young.
Thank you. I also just want to call out another group that you touched on explicitly, but it is all the city council staff and city staff that provide the expertise from their individual departments. One of the things that I am inherently aware of is that we ask those individuals to drop everything when it comes to responding to, time-sensitive bills, whether fiscal or policy-driven, and that they're doing that in addition to the day-to-day work to be able to advance their efforts here at the city. I am incredibly impressed, being my first legislative session with the city, by the team that truly drives and supports what's best for our residents. And I just wanted to show appreciation to our council staff, as well as the mayor and her team, for all of the work that our employees do to be able to make sure that we're working forward with the state legislature while still advocating for the needs of our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Wharton.
Thank you again. I know I've thanked you all individually, except for you, Dave. I'm sorry. But I expressed this in meetings as well, but I want to do it here too, that thank you so much for all the work that you did, and all the work that you're already doing to prepare for next year. I think you are all a great team, and I have lots of confidence in you, and I'm really glad that Salt Lake City has you to help us. Thank you.
All right. That's a pretty complete gratitude circle. So thank you all.
Thank you for the gratitude. Appreciate all of you. And let us know if you guys have any questions.
Thanks. All right, with that, we will move on to the window requirements for new construction in city, local, historic districts. Brian Fulmer. I don't see our Brian. Oh, he's online. Sorry, Brian. I was looking for you in person. And Lex Trauber. Ooh, and we get Kelsey too. I didn't see her name on here, but anytime I get to hang out with you is a good day. So, all right, thank you.
Chair, this is a proposal from the administration to add clarity on appropriate window materials, window location, and installation for new construction within local historic districts and landmark sites throughout the city. I'll turn it over to Lex.
Thank you. Yes, it's me. I'm back for another HLC discussion. You're probably sick and tired of me. I had a little presentation. If we could jump to that, it'd be great. If you could go to the next slide. So the purpose of this text amendment is to ensure that ordinance standards and our design guidelines are clear in regards to windows in new construction projects. It's also to provide consistency in reviews and clear expectations for applicants when developing project plans. Next slide, please. There are several issues with the current standards and design guidelines. The first is that vinyl as an appropriate and durable window material is highly questionable. Secondly, the manner of installation, the window inset is not stipulated in our documents, and so that often creates tension. And that window inset is the reveal, meaning that we are stipulating or proposing to stipulate that windows, when they're installed in new construction, are inset. And third, there are inconsistencies between our design guidelines, the residential design guidelines, and the apartment and multifamily design guidelines, and we want to make those consistent. Next slide, please. I wanted to just show you some examples of what we're talking about, just to give you an idea. In this slide, you can see that there are different facade materials. One is brick, and the windows that have been installed in that brick facade do have a minimum reveal. It's not super, but there is some there that creates shadow, and that's typical of traditional windows in historic buildings. You can also see in the stucco area, the lighter color, the doors, the sliding doors that are on the balconies, and then the windows adjacent are vinyl windows, and they have been installed flush with the wall. It gives a very flat appearance that's not typically what you see in historic structures. Next slide, please. This is a project right behind the Masonic Temple. This is new construction. This is a really good example of window and door installations in a new construction project in the city's historic district. They also use traditional styled windows, like a 1/1 single double hung type window. But you can see that these windows have been inset into the wall, whether the cladding material is stucco or brick, what have you. This is a great example. Next slide, please. This is also a nice example. You might even be able to see it a little bit better in this photograph of windows that have been installed with that inset, that reveal. This is a project on 9th East, just south of South Temple. This is a newer multifamily project that turned out really well. Next slide. This is an example of a typical vinyl window, and in this example you can see the dimensions of a typical window as it would be viewed from the exterior of the structure. You notice the dimensions of window components, particularly the rails and the stiles, are much narrower than what a traditional window would be, particularly wood. The overall window is also very simple in design, and it's not similar to historic window design and dimensions. Next slide, please. This is a wood window, and you can see the dimensions of the wood window here, the thicker, wider dimensions, as well as the different planes that compose that window. This window is more complex, and it is more decorative in appearance than a vinyl window. Next slide. This is just an example of those windows side by side so you can see the difference there. Next slide, please. There was a comment made at the Planning Commission by one of the planning commissioners because we've proposed a hybrid approach to window installation in new construction, meaning that in some areas of a building, vinyl windows may be perfectly appropriate. And the reason contractors typically want to use vinyl is because they're less expensive, but that conflicts with the nature of vinyl windows not being a sustainable or nor historic material. And in this example, this is a project on 5th East and South Temple. On the far left, you can see that is from the street view. You can see those windows very easily, very readily, and we would propose that a more historic window would be used in those kind of locations, as well as that middle photo. The photo on the far right is the same building. It's looking down an alley towards the west from 5th East, and those windows that are way back on that alley or on the interior kind of courtyard of that building would probably be appropriate locations for vinyl windows. You can't readily see them from the street. And it would allow contractors to use those less expensive windows where you can't see them. Next slide. That's the presentation that I put together. If you have any questions, I would be happy to try to answer those for you.
Thank you. Council?
Just to clear, this is all new construction, but we talked new constructions on historic, so I'm kind of confused there because I would think just historic buildings would be remodeling and no vinyls would be allowed. So
this is strictly on new construction in the city's historic districts.
In the city's historic districts. Okay.
Does this mitigate affordability by requiring more expensive building materials in districts designated as historical? This feels like it might work against our affordable housing incentives as I look at it for the first time.
You want to?
Sure. I can jump in.
I really like how he punted that one to you, Kelsey.
We're going to tag team this, President.
You know, we've been not allowing vinyl windows in new construction since we started regulating new construction in local historic districts. What this does is codify a hybrid approach. And we would have to pull the numbers to see if any of those approved projects were affordable, but.
Is renovation considered new construction?
No. So this is only brand new construction.
It's only when they go and buy something in a historic district, take it down, and then put up the McMansion in its place or whatever.
Or they have a vacant parcel already, like the Masonic Temple. They have that huge parking lot behind the building.
That one disturbs me because that's plenty of room for affordability in that spot.
Yeah. And Lex is correct. It's typically these larger projects that maybe they consolidate a couple non-contributing properties and then do a larger scale new construction project.
I have not insignificant concerns about this. As you know, historic preservation is a thing for me. I like it. I'm with it. But we've been working really hard to promote geographical equity for affordability and to allow everyone at whatever price point they are to choose where they live. And I really am a little loath to implement something that would increase a cost of living or would impede affordability in a new construction. So I don't know if any other council people share my concern around that or if I'm a lone voice.
I mean, I do share that concern. I have another question. Is this just an outright prohibition of vinyl windows, or is it, I think there's something about primary facade. And then what about vinyl windows that aren't white or almond colored that have like a cap on them? Because they're making new ones with an aluminum cap on a vinyl window. I'm not necessarily saying that those are good, but I know that there's advances that are happening in the industry that might make them look more appropriate, but still be less expensive.
Yeah, this is not an outright ban on vinyl windows. It's only in proposed that someone would be able to allow or use vinyl windows where they're not readily visible on the street. And typically in these very, very large multifamily projects, the window cost is a massive cost in these projects. And so we want to be sensitive to the cost, but we also have a preservation program that
Are there other
we want to
alternatives that
maintain as
aren't
well.
vinyl that preserve affordability? Is it just the vinyl that we're opposed to? Or are we saying that wood windows are what you have to put in?
No, we're not saying wood. It could be wood. It could be clad wood windows. It could be fiberglass.
And
Things
is there
of that
a
nature.
level of
Composite.
affordability?
Composite
Those
windows.
are also acceptable, which are a kind of a combination of a vinyl byproduct with wood material.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd like to marinate on this just a little bit about where the better part of wisdom is in balancing the multiple priorities here.
Sure, and as Lex was saying, it's not all the windows.
It's just the facade windows.
Yeah.
So. Anyone else? All right, thank you. It was
Thank
good
you.
to see you both.
All right.
All right. David, I see you here, and I see Brandon. Is that enough for us to get started? We're a little ahead of schedule. Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the next item, which is the Citizens Compensation Advisory Committee 2024 Annual Report. We'll welcome David Salazar and Brandon Dew to the dais.
I'm up. You're up. I'm up. Madam Chair, Council, Mayor, and staff, it's an honor to be in front of all of you today. So the Citizens Compensation Advisory Committee has been hard at work since last fall to present this report to you here today. And so I'm just going to go through the highlights of the report. Anything that you guys want to stop me on or ask questions, feel free. We'll do our best to answer those for you and kind of go from there. So I just want to recognize our CCAC committee. I'm the chair this year. Jana Bake, who's here with us, is our vice chair. We also have Claire Baldwin, Jeff Herring, Casey Lund, Mike Terry, and Jeff Worthington that sit on that committee. And we have great city staff, as you guys know, Deb, David, Michael, Penny, and Lori that help advise us and guide us and get us the information we need to make educated and good decisions to put into this report. So I'll just go over this and I'll just go over kind of the key points of the report. And then if you have questions as we go along, feel free to stop. So in section 1, we looked at many economic factors, including inflation, the tight labor market, low unemployment rates that are continuing to have a direct impact on compensation within the city and the state of Utah as a whole. We're seeing U.S. employers raising percentages. According to Mercer, their merit increase by budgets this year will be roughly 3.5%, with total salary increases of 3.8%. While the World at Work's annual budget survey of roughly 2,146 participants showed 3.6% merit increases and a 4.1% budget increase. And finally, Willis Tower Watson is showing overall increases of 4%. When we looked at the state, the industry, and the organizational size, we are seeing more of a 4 to 5% increase for our city. Because of these factors, the CCAC is coming to you again with a recommendation of an overall salary budget increase of no less than 5%. The committee also wants to stress a recommendation of an overall increase to the city's salary range structures of no less than 3%. In section 2, the CCAC has established a very well put together review of job classifications, and this year we benchmarked 85 benchmark groups, which cover roughly 1,045 active jobs or 1,265 employees, which is roughly 38% of the city's regular full-time workforce. So what you're going to see in section 2 is data that is being displayed in 3 groups, which is AFSCME, public safety, and non-represented employees. And we use, for ease of examination, as you go through this, categories such as significantly lagging, slightly lagging, competitive, and significantly leading guidelines. So when we looked at the AFSCME group, we had 37 benchmarks covering 402 employees, or about 45% of the total jobs surveyed. There were 2 jobs that we found to be significantly lagging. Those were the crime scene technician 2 and the plans examiner. While plumber 2, water meter technician 2, building inspector 2, maintenance electrician 4, and arborist 2, and asphalt equipment operator 2 were slightly lagging. When we moved into the public safety section of the report, this is where we really spent a significant time and energy this year, as we hadn't really dug into this as deep as we had some of the other classifications in previous years. As you know, the council created Resolution 20, which you have in Appendix E, which was passed in June of last year. This gave the committee new information and direction from the council. And the committee really dug into this evaluation of the surrounding cities that were comparable, and we used the following criteria. The criteria we used was to focus on the top of pay among the largest agencies in Utah, which we set at 90 or more full-time employees within those cities and agencies. And the agencies obviously include fire and police, and they're located on page 6 of your report. The committee also refined comparisons further, which you will see in the report on page 7, to determine the average top rate and the median top rate. So there was a total of 5 benchmark jobs covering 659 employees that we evaluated in the public safety group. And I'd ask that you please review page 7 to see the results of our public safety review. The results were pretty staggering, and it's, in my estimation, that this is the area the council should pay the most significant amount of your time reviewing. Pretty staggering at where we were from a public safety standpoint in comparison to similar cities. Finally, the non-represented summary can be found on page 8 and 9, and you will see there are several classifications which should be reviewed that are significantly lagging or slightly lagging, and in our estimation will make it hard for the city to attract and retain employees in these classifications. The committee continues to express our support for the city's compensation strategy to position Salt Lake City as an area pay leader for employees. So we recommend that the mayor and the city council appropriate financial resources necessary to grant market salary adjustments for employees in benchmark jobs identified in this report as lagging in the market. Finally, we have section 3, which we reviewed elected officials, department directors, and other key city leaders, and the consensus of the committee is you guys are all overpaid. Okay, I'm just kidding, just kidding. No, but we did receive responses from 32 cities whose populations range between 100,000 and 600,000 citizens. Elected officials were based on and limited to entities with similar types of governments with full-time mayors and part-time councils. We also reviewed the data obtained by appointed executives and department heads and others in key appointed city positions. These salaries were analyzed and considered based on normalized median salary comparisons. While we believe all of us respect the hard work you do, it is the committee's recommendation to take no action at this time on the executive salary issues. We do advise to allow additional time for city leaders and any potential changes in organizational structures to be thoroughly evaluated against the market findings before making any significant pay decisions. So this would conclude my report, the CCAC's hard and extensive work, and again, just want to thank the CCAC committee members for their diligence in getting us to this point, and the city staff for helping to give us the information we need to make these important recommendations. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Young.
Thank you. really appreciate this work. I think it's incredibly important as the capital city to be leading when it comes to the compensation that we offer our employees, and having this information is really helpful. I have two quick questions that I'm wondering if I can just get a little more detail on. So I'm looking at, let's see, page 5 with the breakouts related to how the job titles are related to the market rate salary. I'm making an assumption and I guess seeking clarification. When we say the SLC top rate, that is not inclusive of then the recommended 5% increase that we would have across the board. Is that accurate?
That's correct. That's based on the current pay structure for employees in those jobs. It's the top pay rate that they achieve.
Okay, so ideally, if the city was to move forward with a recommendation of 5%, we would adjust all of those by 5% and then run the comparison versus where they are related to the average.
Correct, exactly.
Okay, that's helpful. And then my other question was really specific to public safety. For this one, I'm looking at page 6. I noticed that we choose different cities related to our comparisons for fire and police. And I was just curious kind of how those cities are selected and what our rationale is behind that.
So it was based on 90 full-time employees, so that's why some cities have more than others. Some fire departments were larger than others, and some police departments were larger. So we tried to have comparable, and we just used a 90 full-time employee criteria.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Thank you for that.
Anyone else? When we are looking on the charts under the number of SLC incumbents, are Chris and I correct that if there's a 0 there, that indicates a higher turnover, or are there other reasons why that would be 0?
So the number of incumbents refers to the number of employees in that specific job title. And so if there's a 0, that means we don't currently have employees in that job title, but there'll be maybe different levels of the same job that are part of that benchmark group.
I'm glad we asked.
That we're also evaluating, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you both so much. Good to see you. All right, team, we are running way ahead of schedule at this point. So let's go ahead and take the planned 20-minute break. I see Lorena Rifo Jensen. Lorena, if we come back at 3:55 instead of 4:15, can we do your portion then? You'll be good? All right, and then we can let everyone else know that we're running a little ahead of schedule today. Okay, thank you all. Let's take a 20-minute break. Please be back at 3:55. Thank you. Welcome back. We are now going to move on to the Sister Cities Annual Report. I'm going to invite Lorena Rifo Jensen, Katie Matheson, and Ross Chambliss to the table. Good to see you all. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. Katie will discuss in more detail the work that has been accomplished. Is this on? It is on. And yet, I would be remiss not to thank our mayor for challenging our department to ensure that we had an operating, functioning sister city program that would make the city very proud. As you will see from Katie's presentation last year, there was much that was accomplished, but it was also accomplished because of the great work that the board is doing. So Ross, thank you for being here with us. He's the board chair. And I also want to thank you because last year you supported the changes that needed to be made to the city ordinance. And without the approval of that, we couldn't have been doing this work. As you know, in addition to trade delegations that visit our city and tourism dollars that come to our city, sister city programs overall create relationships. And as we know, relationship of trust create partnerships with other municipalities around the world, other institutions of higher learning, and also opportunities for businesses. These connections build trust, access, and expertise that help our local businesses. And I would add that, of course, that would have to be developed, but in the near future, the Olympics is something that we need to consider and potentially be part of this program. And with that, I'm going to say thank you again. I'm going to turn the time to Katie.
Great. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. Can we go to the next slide, please? Excellent. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of an overview on the program. Some of you are new. It's been a year that since we've been up here. So, of course, the program was established in 1956. Salt Lake City currently has 6 active sister city relationships. And the goal is to promote peace through mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation. And these programs, thinking of them as individual relationships, collectively hold tremendous potential and should be seen as vital assets for our city on the world stage. And of course, it's about relationships and promoting peace, but they can also help us learn and grow from our sister cities around the globe. Opportunities for connection include things like new technologies and trade, healthcare, climate change mitigation strategies, education, and city policies and best practices. So before we move on to the annual report, I want to give you some context to help you understand this presentation. There are two things happening simultaneously right now in the international diplomacy world and in Salt Lake City. The first one, of course, is that Salt Lake is amplifying its Olympic city status, and this has increased foreign interest in our city and accelerated the number of diplomatic requests that we've had, and I see this only accelerating over the next 10 years. And then also, at the same time, the state government, federal government, and international community are embracing diplomacy at a subnational level, which means like at a local, state, and city level. And this is amplified by the fact that the State Department about a year ago created a unit for subnational diplomacy. So with these two things in mind, Salt Lake City has an opportunity to use this program to build infrastructure for the diplomatic side of the Olympics, like Lorena mentioned, respond appropriately to increased international interest, and learn and share best practices from international cities on policy issues such as climate mitigation and policing. So as we move closer to welcoming the world again as the host for the 2034 Winter Olympics, this Sister Cities program can help us cultivate our city into an international center for Winter Olympics and beyond. Next slide, please. So to go over just a couple of our organizational changes before our board chair Ross gets into the specifics of each of the cities, you'll see there are things that we have completed since we updated the ordinance on Valentine's Day, or Valentine's Day last year was when we presented, and then you approved it the following week. So obviously we've updated the ordinance, we have new board members, we have new board leadership, new bylaws, and an updated website. And then ongoing is internal database organization, which is no small feat for a program that has existed for 65 years. We're digitizing past documents, meeting with cities and the State Department, and doing ongoing diplomatic record keeping. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ross.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Katie. And members of the council, it's really nice to see you all today. I think I would just preface by saying that I'm thrilled to be able to talk with you about Sister Cities. It's something that's very dear to me. Growing up, my family, we were always actually hosting students visiting from Matsumoto almost every July, and it kind of became a ritual, a routine. And little did I know that I'd have the chance years later to live in that city for a number of years, to be an English teacher. And then little did I know that I would actually get married to someone from that city. And we live here and we have a family, but I'm very much invested in Sister Cities, you might say. So with that said, I'm just going to briefly go through kind of the current updates with each of our cities and what we as a board, what we came to see as opportunities for going forward with those relationships. And then we'll be ready to answer your questions. So next slide, please. Okay, so just an update on Torino, Italy. This relationship as a sister city was established in 2007. This year we connected initially with staff, with Mayor Stefano LaRusso, and after that did not have much interaction since, although we have some further interactions in the works, but we certainly see opportunities for collaboration in the areas of sports tourism, higher education, cultural exchange. The other city, of course, is Matsumoto, which is our oldest sister city, established in 1958. Many of you, I know, were present last summer when a delegation from Matsumoto came to recognize the 65th anniversary of that relationship, had a proclamation ceremony, and even a panel discussion focused on climate change. Since this past year, since then, we've had two at least virtual education exchanges that took place between students here in Salt Lake and students in Matsumoto, and we are looking at a reciprocal visit to Matsumoto later this year. So of course, opportunities with Matsumoto, we have a lot of similarities and interest in sustainable tourism and outdoor recreation. Of course, they have some sort of indirect relationship hosting the Olympics in 1998 in Nagano City, and of course, ongoing educational and cultural exchange. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. Actually, this is sort of what I just said here, so. Excuse me.
See the photos, though.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll move forward then. So next slide, please. Okay. So, yeah, let me speak a little bit to Trujillo, Peru. This past year, we looked at, we started working on what we hope will become a kind of exchange of firefighter training and educational exchange, which is something that they initiated. They expressed interest in developing skills and resources they have for firefighters, specifically with airport firefighters this past year, and we connected them with the appropriate people here locally in Salt Lake, and that project is in process. Also, board member Becerra helped us to coordinate with a cultural dance event with the Peruvian community here in Salt Lake. And next steps are that we see welcoming a new Peruvian consul general and like this, supporting the firefighter training that I mentioned going forward. So maybe we'll push to the next slide, please. Just on this slide, just additionally to mention that with our city in Ukraine, obviously, as everyone knows, we have not been able to have much activity with this city since the conflict with Russia. But we actually have had some interesting connections with refugees from Ukraine now living in our community. We were able to connect successfully with the state refugee coordinator, who brought it to our attention that there were some people in that community that were seeking more advanced English language opportunities, as well as bringing up the barriers they were facing to access driver's licenses. So we were able to connect them with appropriate people at the state level and even some legislators who could focus on that. So that actually was an interesting, through Sister Cities, we were able to help that community to some degree. And of course, this council and the mayor's office sent a letter of support and solidarity early last year. That was delivered to Ukraine, but that relationship is currently on hold. And we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, and maybe the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so looking at Keelung, Taiwan, this relationship established in 1979. This relationship's had an interesting relationship with between police forces, and we have tried to. We're looking again at trying to revitalize that long-standing relationship between the police forces, and also we're kind of gathering a lot of archive materials that we'd like to archive for record keeping, but certainly we share environmental concerns and interest in cultural exchange and being port cities between those cities. And then of course our other city, Ijevsk, Russia, established 2011. For like I said, we have not had much relationship or communication with that city, unfortunately. However, it is still our sister city, and so that relationship is currently on hold. So with that, we'll be open to your questions.
Real quick, if I can just say one more thing. I would be remiss without first thanking the council members who participated in the visit from Matsumoto last summer. It was incredibly charming, especially Councilmember Mano, to have you there and just have that personal connection. Utah and Salt Lake have a very special connection with Japan, and it was wonderful to have you all there. And these visits that we have are lifts, and I wanted to thank council staff as well, who often are behind the scenes helping us with gifts and helping us make sure that we are being good and gracious and humble hosts. So thank you to everyone in the council team.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I want to. I mean, I heard your introduction to this as being a challenge from the mayor. You need to take credit. Your team needs to take credit for the work that you have done by yourself. I'm impressed with. I mean, I came to council in 2022, and this program was not active. There was no staff, there was no funding, there was also not an active board, and here we are. And with the board, with connections to other cities, with events, with cities visiting us, with potential plans to go visit and connect more. I'm very impressed with that, and it is humbling to see the work and how it pays out. So take credit because you deserve it. And I do have a question though. What are the steps that we follow to add a city? Is there a policy steps or a policy to add a city? And can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm going to let Katie do that, but I think the most important thing, and just want to say thank you so much for your kind words. I think it takes all of us working together, and I think this is an example when both branches of government are side by side making things happen. So thank you kindly. Basically, what happens is within the community, within Salt Lake City, if there is a larger population per se, of the Peruvian community, they could make that request. And with that, I'm going to let the details come from Katie, who runs the program.
Yes, so current policy is that the request must come from an individual or organization that is headquartered within Salt Lake City. And there's a form that they have to fill out, including like why this relationship, what is it based on? Is there enough interest to sustain this relationship? Because, I mean, we just celebrated 65 years with Matsumoto. It's a long time. And then they also need a letter of support from the requesting government. And then it goes through an approval process, first with the board, and then it's recommended to mayor and council. Currently, we do have a few requests that are waiting. We have collected a few requests, but we're not approving anything yet. We'll accept applications, but nothing is being approved yet because there's work to be done still with this body and with the mayor regarding the direction that we want to go for the program.
Yeah, that answers that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question. And thank you to all this work. This is really incredible. And I love the connection to international cities. I think it shows the diversity and the cultural appetite we have at Salt Lake City. My question is in relation to preparing these connections with the Olympics. Is there a plan set forward for how we'll utilize this programming, or are you starting to envision that process?
That's an excellent question. I think one of the things that we're doing internally is assessing, also understanding as a city. The announcement will be made in July, but we're looking at other cities. Katie, we have a membership that Katie has ensured that we are active with other cities that have hosted, so we can learn from them. We have a lot of things we can learn from the 2002, and yet that was 22 years ago. So we are trying to do basically our due diligence, talking to cities that recently, but I think that plan will come as part of the mayor working with you, and we're starting to do that.
Yeah, if I can jump in real quick. One thing that's been interesting to me as I've been managing this program is that Salt Lake City has in some ways viewed diplomacy work and sister cities as the same, where diplomacy work, sister cities is really a subset of diplomacy work. And so what we're talking about now, the reason I gave my preface is because right now it's all kind of a big jumble, but eventually they could probably should be parsed out a little bit more. But this is a great opportunity for us as a city to get our feet wet in that work. And we do have some important relationships, as was mentioned, with both Torino and with Matsumoto, that have Olympic experience. And the Mayor LoRusso of Torino has mentioned an interest in connecting with our city to talk about Olympic city status, to talk about sports tourism. So, as cities, there is no city school. We learn from each other, basically. And that's how we're priming these conversations and prepping for the Olympics, is through that, and also the membership Lorena mentioned, which is the World Union of Olympic Cities, which we are now a member of.
Lastly, go ahead.
Councilmember Mono.
Oh, if I cut you off, I'm sorry, but I wanted to say thank you for the work that went in specifically to the Matsumoto trip. That was really special for me and a highlight of last year. I actually just got back from Japan a couple weeks ago on a diplomatic trip. And they talked a lot about subnational diplomacy. Both, we met with members of the State Department, the U.S. Embassy, as well as the Japanese government, and both countries are really interested in subnational diplomacy, and mentioned specifically the Sister City program. And I always, it makes more sense to me now, even after that trip, why the Sister Cities program is part of economic development. And there's this one program I learned about that was there called Select USA Investment Summit. Has our city ever participated in that?
We have not, but we've heard of that program, and that's something that's on our radar right now.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage us to just look into it a little bit more. International investors from around the world will come to the United States and get pitches from different governments or local or state governments about why to invest in that. And I think that something that could be really powerful that I learned about on that trip. I'm also really interested in that relationship because of what it could mean for our Japantown downtown and getting actual companies from Japan to invest in Salt Lake City and maybe even locate in Japantown. I think that could be a really powerful and exciting tool. So I'm hopeful to use the connections I made just recently on this trip to help further the Matsumoto. I didn't unfortunately go to Matsumoto, but let me know what comes up with that relationship. I'm particularly interested in helping to further it.
Thank you so much. We would love to follow up with you. Maybe we can set something up with your liaison and we can get together and get that information. I just wanted to add one thing, if I may. Because of the relationships that we have in our community, I want to say we have had a Mexican consulate's office over 100 years. We have a consulate's office from El Salvador here. And now we just heard in the last month that that the government of Peru will have their consulate office here in Salt Lake City, which is really important to us. And we worked really hard to ensure that they had, we could meet their real estate needs. And I appreciate everyone that worked on that.
I thought we already had the consulate of Peru here.
Yes, it was an honorary consul, David Utrilla, and now with the large number of the Peruvian population here in Salt Lake City, they're opening an official. So those are the 3 official ones. The other ones are honorary.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask what the timeline is about the putting the policy direction in place that you want for the program. Before we approve new sister cities, there is an interest in some new sister cities, and I've gotten some feedback about that, and people asking me to send them information about starting that process. Okay. And I don't want to, direct them to or encourage them to start making any efforts towards that if it's not going to produce anything, because we don't have we have sort of an open-ended deadline. So I'd like to be working towards something so that I, can help set that expectation with people that are interested. So what are your thoughts on that?
You would? I'm sorry about that. I would say we will be coming to the table to ask for resources to support this program. Right now, we've been supporting it through our marketing communications manager, who is so passionate about this. So I would say within a couple of months, we would have a better answer for you.
Great.
I also want to turn to maybe Ross as the chairman of the board to also work together with us to ensure we get that done. But it's an issue of resources right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Pui?
Just a quick thought. The conversation helped me remember something that popped at some point in the last couple of years, and it's the connection with the Peace Gardens. we made any connection or thoughts onto that direction. Certainly, there's when Matsumoto came here to visit us, they went there. We worked very hard to get a piece of the Japanese garden in good shape, and I wonder if there is a good connection there to make that place even more special for our community.
I'm so glad you raised that issue. I think that's also something that's on the table that we need to look at and come back with a plan. I also would like to probably involve my peer, Kristen Riker, in that discussion, because they were phenomenal, as well as the council office donating through Home Depot a lot of resources for that. But I would need to connect with Kristen, because this is a conversation that needs to be, beyond economic development. But that's an excellent point, and we can definitely add that to, the different items that we need to get done within the next year.
Definitely that's something that means a lot to me, and certainly it will create a connection with some important stakeholders and to the park, which I think
it's a very special place. It really is.
Councilmember Wharton.
Sorry, I meant to start with this. Totally skipped over it, but I also wanted to thank you for the visit last summer. I've heard a lot of horror stories from past visits that have, or like incident issues that have happened, and I thought that that the way that we handled this last one, and I've seen some, luckily I haven't been here for any like major issues, but it was very, very different this last time, and you definitely made me feel really proud of our city and the work that we did. And for the first time, I wasn't like, gonna go, like, how are we gonna look? So I just wanted to give you my sincere thank you on that, and well done.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Not just that. And that's not the disasters I was talking about either. Thank you.
Karaoke disasters.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? The International Studies nerd in me loves this program, and thank you so much for the attention that you're giving it and how we might see it become more vibrant and grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to our informational update from the Cultural Core Bucks. Coming up to the table will be Felicia Baca, Jake Maxwell, and Brittany Helmers. There is no plugging in. Did you email here? Yeah, I did. Okay.
So they'll pull it up.
Yep. So you just have to verbally prompt when you want the slide changed.
Push. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We're here today to talk to you about the Blocks, which is the arts district that is a product of the Cultural Core Implementation Plan, which was adopted by Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County in 2016 through an interlocal agreement and a contract with Downtown SLC Presents. It's focused on 3 objectives: creative placemaking, marketing and promotion, and audience development within a 75-mile drive radius. And it's a requirement of the interlocal agreement that we present to you all before the budget cycle for this. We also do this for Salt Lake County, and as you know, they're on a January through December calendar year. So they went through this process in July with unanimous adoption for the next programming year, and that was the case as the year before as well. The activation areas of the blocks are North Temple to 400 South and 600 West to 300 East. And we have a $300,000 contribution from Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County each year for a total of $600,000. It's governed by a 6-person Cultural Core Budget Committee, which are appointed by the mayors of the respective entities. And Matt Castillo at Salt Lake County is my counterpart. So since we saw you all last, we had a written briefing, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Brittany Helmers, who is the new director of the Cultural Core, and I'll let her take it from here.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Council. My name is Brittany Helmers. I'm the Program Director for the Blocks. I believe I know most of you, and most of you know what the Blocks are. So today, I'd love to go through what was accomplished in the past year and what we look forward to in the upcoming year. Next slide, please. The Blocks started the year off with an operating budget of $600,000, all thank you to the investment made by Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County. The goal of the year was to hit as many key performance indicators as we possibly could, which is promotion, placemaking, programming, and partnerships. Throughout this presentation, you'll see that we focused on building our partnerships to the max, promoting more than we ever have, and continue to excel at programming the arts throughout downtown. We continue to grow the audience by reaching out to the 75-mile radius surrounding Salt Lake City through new partnerships, all to reach the goals such as the 1 million for social media reach and to seed at least 5 new programs throughout the county, but ensure they happen that they all happen within the geographic boundaries of the Blocks. Next slide. In 2023, the Blocks worked to update its identity. We went from being the Blocks, Salt Lake's cultural core, to building what we call the Blocks Arts District. We worked on a rebrand to strengthen the clarity of what we do and who we are. Our goal is threefold: curate, amplify, and create visibility. But how do we do that? We curate activations within the boundaries of the Blocks and highlight performers from a 75-mile radius around downtown. We amplify the existing arts in downtown and celebrate the diversity and economic benefit of the arts that Capitol Theater, Rose Wagner, and the Eccles bring into downtown. And last but not least, we create visibility for all artists and provide them with a platform to promote their own art. Next slide. In starting with how we began curating within the Blocks Arts District, we partnered with Salt Lake City, Little City, and multiple other entities to produce the Green Loop concept project that I know you are all familiar with. There were 10 nights of programming in partnership with Little City, where 19 local performers would showcase their talent on a stage in the middle of 200 East between 400 South. 1 local sculpture that was redesigned and repurposed from our NBA All-Star Weekend, Central, to fit at the edge of the badminton court. In total, there was approximately 4,500 people in attendance across 10 shows. Next slide. In addition to the Green Loop, the Blocks produced the first year of Steppin' on Main with Eccles Theater, Tin Angel, and Salt Lake County Arts and Culture. This first year event produced 15 nights of free cultural activations on the front steps of Eccles Theater, including approximately 30 performers and artists showcasing their talent, creating a culturally diverse program, and provided visibility for these artists in a venue shared by national. The Blocks programmed 5 of these nights and had approximately 1,700 people in attendance and about 330 people per show. Here's a picture showcasing the event from Academia Mis Races de Ellen Moreno on August 18th. We had over 500 people in attendance for this specific event, and people from across the county enjoyed the mariachi music. So sorry. To keep with the theme of seeding first-year events, the Blocks helped produce Main Street, a fashion show intertwined with local musicians and models weaving in and out of Eccles Theater. With approximately 900 people in attendance, this event has stuck in our minds as one of the most culturally diverse and amazing and artistic events in downtown Salt Lake City. 7 fashion designers participated in the showcase, 7 musicians and performers performed on the stage, and over 85 models walked in the fashion show. Highly recommend this one for the. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, one more. As an integral part of the team that brought you Open Streets, the Blocks aligned and curated multiple social activities that kept people coming back night after night. All in all, the Blocks team worked with and managed over 95 performers, including artists, musicians, activators, to bring you events such as the Disco Box at Exchange Place, yoga on Saturdays at Base Camp, and 2 new murals on Main Street. In addition to these nightly events, the Blocks curated an art market with our colleague and friend, Kim Hall of Alpine Earthworks, a pottery maker, to present the first ever art market on Main with around 25 local craft vendors. Next slide. Here's a few other images just showing the fun that was curated on Main Street for Open Streets, the Slam Block Party, the Brazuca Band, as well as yoga on Saturdays. Next slide. In seeding and promoting these events, the Blocks has achieved considerably more earned free media over the past year. To date, the team has seen almost $4.3 million in earned media. These features help us grow and add a spotlight to the downtown lifestyle and culture. One of those features being the weekly look ahead put forth by the Salt Lake Tribune, shown in this image here, showcasing three amazing legacy arts organizations' performances at Capitol Theater, Utah Symphony, and Ballet West between February 4th and February 10th. Next slide. While all legacy arts are thriving through the promotion from the blocks, we also work to create new audiences. The blocks helped fund the amazing Taroville by Curbside Theater for the 4th year in a row. Attendance was boosted to almost 230 people to gather on the top of the Pierpont parking garage rooftop for a spectacle by SB Dance and Curbside Theater. This event was made possible by our friends at Vectra, who allowed us to utilize the top level of their parking garage on Pierpont Avenue. This event continues to create a buzz around town by meeting all the criteria of the Cultural Core Action Plan to activate underutilized places. What better way to do this than to activate one of the many parking garages we have downtown? Next slide, please. The Blocks team also worked to gain recognition on a national level and participated in the Music Cities Convention in Huntsville, Alabama. This year, our program manager participated in a panel discussion about music urbanism, rethinking the role of music and culture in urban development. She sat on a panel with representatives from DC, California, Alabama, and from the Hoodoo Mural Festival in Texas. One takeaway from this panel was from Marquise Harris Dawson stating, "We need to create cultural assets on purpose to prevent pricing out culture in our communities. Culture is one of those things in our society that can trump the economy." Just to note, this year's Music Cities Convention is in Dubai. We do not plan on going, but it would be amazing. Next slide, please. One of those cultural assets that has been going strong for the past few years is Glow at Gallivan. Glow is a part of our regular scheduled programming every year to light up the dreary months of winter. Curated as a partnership with In Theory Art Collective to produce an immersive light festival at Gallivan Plaza. In 2023, we had over 50 illuminated light sculptures to light up the night, displayed for 3 months from November to March. We went big this year, and we hope to bring it back just as big next year. Next slide. Glow at Gallivan continued to amaze us through all of the media. Glow alone reached 4.3 million impressions through our social media channels, about 8,100 click-throughs on our website, and had a 10% higher engagement than previous campaigns. One to note was through kidsoutandabout.com, which promotes kid-friendly activities across the country. Great to see that national recognition again. Next slide, please. Although those winter months can be tough to program and get people outside, however, that hasn't stopped us from programming in the cold. The Blocks brought back Groove at Gallivan to program every Wednesday night in February. We had 5 partnerships with different DJs. That Glow at Gallivan is still in action, I wrote this in February, through March 1, and what better way to experience both events than on Wednesday nights after work. Next slide, please. This is probably one of our favorite things that we have actually brought to action this past year, but the Co-Create program is a new addition to the Blocks programming. Through this program, we aspire to establish a collaborative alliance between our organization and other creative teams dedicated to bringing their creative vision to fruition right here in Salt Lake City. Our discussions will encompass a wide array of topics, including concept development, risk assessment, and past successes, and the composition of our teams, all geared towards meticulously planning and executing a unique, one-of-a-kind experience in the most effective and rewarding manner possible. We have 8 collaborators that are selected through a simple application process. A total of $170,000 of our budget is invested to date in this program. To date, we have collaborated with 3 of them and are planning to put on 1, the first ever youth music festival with students from around the county in partnership with the Salt Lake Academy of Music. 2, an art installation called Hidden Waters in partnership with Seven Canyons Trust, highlighting art and water conservation. This project will also connect the Central Business District with the Folsom Trail. And 3, we just awarded last week Bachauer Piano putting on events and concerts, on Abravanel Hall Plaza. Overall, this program is an attempt to provide resources to bolster the community with new innovative ideas. If you know someone who has an idea that has never been seen in Salt Lake City, we want to help them execute their vision and bring it to life. Next slide, please. In addition to building new programs and curating events alongside our strategic partners, the Blocks team is tasked with creating a more vibrant neighborhood and activating underutilized spaces through program spontaneity. And looking at other areas across the country with our team members at the DTA, we took a trip to San Diego to review a project called The Courtyard. The Courtyard has transformed vacated land into activated space, all while making it temporary. A quote by Carol Coletta, featured in an article titled "Strategic Investments in Parks Can Spark Economic Vitality in Downtown," posted by the American Planning Association, states, "Some cities are rethinking their downtowns by exploring the conversion of empty office buildings to housing or hosting large events. But we need more than new housing and Taylor Swift concerts to revive downtowns." Thoughtful and strategic investments in these places we all own together, our parks, community centers, and our streets, may turn out to be some of the smartest moves that American cities can make. While visiting San Diego and the Courtyard project, the Blocks is eager to try new things, create new partnerships, and continue building and activating downtown through the arts, and wink wink, looking at all vacant land to activate. Next slide, please. Shortly after our San Diego trip, the Blocks is hosting, we're in the process, the Women in Travel Summit alongside our friends at Visit Salt Lake and the Utah Office of Tourism. We are touring multiple murals in downtown Salt Lake City alongside each individual artist with 35 women influencers across the country. Naturally, we are ending at this sneaky mural right off Main Street, highlighting this influential women's favorite things. Who knows where this is at? Lovely. Can't wait to show you guys in the future. Next slide, please. The Blocks focuses on large and small opportunities for artists at all levels. Over the past few years, we've been contracted to promote all arts organizations through the 4 Main Street kiosks. In the past few months, we've been reworking that process to also provide an opportunity for our community to exhibit stories and bodies of work on the lower panels of these kiosks. Our goal with this program is to create visibility, again, for emerging artists in downtown neighborhoods, and again, create visibility for them. Artwork will be selected by our internal team, and 4 artists will get the opportunity to showcase their work over the next year. Next slide, please. How are we looking? Overall, in fiscal year 24, the Blocks has thrived in providing promotion, placemaking, programming, and partnerships. With that being said, we have a lot more to do throughout June, and we're looking forward to what's to come. With over 128 artists hired this year to date, and over 105 plus partnerships created, we look forward to continuing to grow and building a downtown arts district. Next slide, please. Getting into the fun things, what's to look ahead for year 8? In year 8, the Blocks looks to take a similar approach to year 7 and continue focusing on marketing, promotion, and programming. With the success of fiscal year 2024, through creating those new partnerships, we're looking at activating around 50 days of programming between June 2024 and October 2024. These programs and activations include, next slide, please. Lovely. Producing locally made, locally played, alongside our friends at the Salt Lake Film Society. In order to focus on the entire district, our goal is to bring LMLP to 2 to 3 different locations across downtown and highlight 5 artists alongside 5 different movie premieres. Come on down to any of the 5 dates above or the last Friday of each month and see local music, eat local food at Copper Common or Broadway Deli, and check out a movie. This collaboration starts on April 26th with the lineup to be released soon. So we have 1 month until that starts. Great. Next slide, please. In addition to producing locally made, locally played alongside our friends at the Salt Lake Film Society, similar to how we produced it at the Green Loop Concept Project, we're looking to bring a larger stage to the farmers market. Every second Saturday, the Blocks team will curate Locally Made, Locally Played at Pioneer Park. With an already large audience, we hope to draw more attraction to the Blocks programming and highlight more local musicians. While we've highlighted a lot of musical events, we're also looking forward to bring more visual arts to the farmers market through an urban plein air event in September. 10 artists will set up easels through the park and paint in plein air of all of their surroundings. These works of art will be auctioned off at a later date for the farmers market, in which the proceeds will go towards the artists and participating arts organizations in the Blocks. Next slide. Through the success of 2023, the team that brought you Steppin' on Main has decided to bring it back for yet another year. However, this year the Blocks is programming a total of 5 nights with 3 larger performances and 2 smaller musical acts. This event will start on July 12th, provide all the Hamilton goers with an extra spice of what downtown Salt Lake City has to offer. One event that we're particularly excited about will be on July 19th in partnership with the Mexican Consulate to bring an actual mariachi festival to the Eccles lobby. Again, this will be a free event and will go from 7 to 10 on July 19th. Next slide. In addition to events, the Blocks is working on creating a maintenance program to clean up and maintain a few of the murals that are seen around downtown. Mural maintenance has been a topic of conversation over the last year, and we think that this upcoming year is the year to entertain the how. We're working towards solutions to repaint a portion of the Edison Street mural, seen here, the 200 West Underpass mural, as well as a mural on Main Street, and partnering with our friends, the Downtown Ambassadors. Next slide. Since our San Diego trip, we've been dreaming of ways to build out some of the blighted spaces in Salt Lake. Can you imagine if all the parking lots could be activated by the community? Can you imagine if demolished buildings were temporary sites for music pop-up experiences? The Blocks team is progressing with a few partners to try to make this a reality. Next slide. Arts organizations will have the opportunity to network with approximately 150 members of the Salt Lake Chamber, talk about their upcoming seasons, and update the community on the work that they do. We look at this as producing an arts launch to the upcoming season. This will connect donors with the arts, this will connect new audiences with the arts organizations, and will most likely become a marquee event for all arts organizations to be a part of for years to come. Next slide. Last but not least, we'll be bringing back the curbside theater experience for another year on top of the Vectra Pierpont parking garage. Don't miss this, September 4th, 2024. Next slide, please. We have secured a date for the Youth Music Festival happening September 7th from noon to 10 p.m., highlighting 10 musicians under the age of 19 with all original music. Next slide, please. Continuously working on the Hidden Waters installation alongside our friends at Seven Canyons Trust through the Co-Create program. Next slide, please. So I leave you with this. Out of all the partnerships we've created and all the dollars spent on promotion, placemaking, and programming, the Blocks is looking to build more. We will continue building community through our Co-Create program. We'll continue providing assets for nonprofit organizations, and we'll continue promoting the legacy arts such as Abravanel Hall, UMOCA, and the Leonardo. We'll continue to grow the audience by reaching out to our 75-mile radius surrounding Salt Lake City through new partnerships. We'll continue to activate the underutilized spaces, and we'll continue building downtown as an arts district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments?
I want to start. I'm so excited by this. Every time you guys come here, I'm like, yes, activate downtown. I really love this focus on activating underutilized spaces. The downtown has approximately 30% asphalt covered parking lots. And so while we wait to activate all that, I think this is a great use, and it promotes utility and maybe what could become blighted space in the future. So thanks for doing that. And I wanted to know, I didn't mention any public art or hear any mention of public art. Does the Blocks help promote that, or is it only in terms of mural art?
We definitely help promote all public art that we have in downtown alongside our friends at the Salt Lake Arts Council as well as at Salt Lake County.
Madam Chair, now that we're talking about murals, I still feel like we are failing on that aspect, and it's a failure of our city not to keep up with the mural game. There is cities in this valley that are doing such an amazing job, and we seem not to be able to crack the framework to make this happen. That to me is a huge disappointment. I'm excited for the blocks, and I'm sort of moving away from what you came here to present. But this is a good opportunity, maybe for us to maybe share our feelings. I know that many of us have traveled with the city or others sponsored trips, and we are always just awed about the mural game, and it is shocking how slow we're moving on this aspect.
Can I respond to that? That is something that we're talking to the administration about and our city partners. As you know, our capital improvement dollars do not qualify as murals don't qualify as capital expenditures, which is our primary stream for public art. And so we're looking at other avenues, funding streams through our Arts Council budget for that.
I'm excited for that, but that's the answer I heard last year. So what I think many of us will want to see is a proposal and how we address this, because I think there is very much an interest on bringing some more life to downtown and some, but yeah, I will leave it at that. Thank you for looking into it.
And I will say also that there are some avenues with a community benefit through Arts Council project grants that do fund murals, as well as our facade improvement grant, where we did make some strides with that team to allow murals in the creation of that, which is new, and we're really excited about that. So we are making some inroads there.
May I add to that?
Yeah.
I really want to focus on the maintenance aspect of it as well prior to us putting up more murals. How do we maintain it? How do we keep them vibrant? How do we think about these murals in the next 10 years as the Olympics are potentially coming? So really creating that maintenance program is something that we want to work on this year and the next year so we can create more murals in the future.
And the city has done a good job in putting money aside to maintain older public art. It seems like we have already a system to do that.
Yeah.
What we need to figure out is a system to make them happen, which seems very hard to figure out.
I was going to talk about murals, and that's okay. It's all right. I don't own murals, but it is very important to me, as you know, and I think we've talked with you, Felicia, about what have been the barriers in the past, and I love the murals that we have. I love the mural projects that we've been involved with, and I think that these are barriers that we can overcome, and that I can't speak for everybody, but it's something that I am prepared to fund if you can come to us with a proposal, and I know that's a big piece of it, so I'm excited. I hope that there'll be something in this budget related to that. And I think you and I in our last conversation realized a path potentially to move that forward, so I'm really excited to see what you can bring. I would love to make some progress on that this year. Thank you.
Lovely.
And thanks for all the other blocks projects as well.
I did have a follow-up. Do we have a projection for future art needed in the city? Do we have a metric for that at all?
Needed in terms of?
I mean, imagining, I think, in response, and not just murals, but sculptures that we see around the city, what we would consider visual public art that's helping placemake in our city. I think about the whale and how that activated different conversations, but central to downtown, we have amazing art at our airport and some centrally located. It'd be great to see that along our tracks line to help invite more tourists to come in. I believe it was Downtown Alliance that also provided some interesting facts and data to back up that tourists are spending time in our downtown, are taking the Green Line in, and we should give them that opportunity as well as investing long-term in our city. And I'm thinking more 10 years down the road, not just the maintenance of that art, but I'd love to see a metric. I don't know if it's what's the funding needed to provide this public art.
Sure. We are definitely daydreaming about a public arts master plan in the near future. And as we plan for the Olympics coming back to Salt Lake, that's something that we're looking to fund in the future. Right now, we're starting about 3 new projects a year with the current funding that we have. As you know, it averages about annually $150,000. And then, of course, we're part of the bond projects, which supplements that. And we run projects from the RDA funds as well and enterprise funds. So actively, we have sometimes 20 projects going at a time. And we are definitely having projects along transportation corridors. And the majority of our new projects in the last several years have been located on the west side, where there's less public art than other areas traditionally.
Yeah, I would just add quickly, I think I'm super supportive of this master plan for public art. I think it's something that could help us expand beyond just this mural conversation. Thanks.
I think what we have the ability to do as far as the blocks as well is through our Co-Create program is do some more outreach to artists that want to see art in public spaces or on private property and see how we can start highlighting that and how we can pay for that through that program.
Thank you. So as I was listening to your presentation, I was kind of drawing a contrast because I'm seeing all of the amazing things that are happening to activate downtown. And yet I was also listening to a lot of the legislative concerns during that particular period of time related to them feeling they had different experiences downtown. So rather than asking you to change the weather associated with those 45 days, I would wonder if there's an opportunity to look at the existing calendar and be able to promote those opportunities that are happening during education interim, not education, but the general legislative interim, to be able to help engage some of those policymakers in those amazing events that are activating downtown that happen outside of legislative session, just to balance that narrative versus maybe some of those 1 or 2 off experiences they may have had, to really see what's happening in the city and why this is an area we invest in our state.
I love that. I love that. Great idea.
I would like to request, I'm glad to see Dee here, there seems to be a lot of overlap and bleeding between the orgs, and I love that because I love synergy and collaboration, but it would be really great to be able to get a little bit of more clearly defined what we're funding when we put funding here, what we're funding when we put funding there, just to be sure that we are spending our dollars as efficiently and effectively as possible and nurturing as much good art in the city as we can. My secondary concern is there is pernicious inequity in the arts. The statistic that I'm most familiar with because of my experience is that combined Black and Latino performers make up less than 2 to 4% of the international orchestral workforce. This is a pipeline issue, but the expression is that when it comes time to be an arts administrator, when you're an arts administrator of color, often breadcrumbs are thrown your way, and investment in you never comes. I have firsthand experience with this, and we'll go into it deep with you if you'd like. I saw a lot of us paying for performances from people of color, but when you described all of our deeper partnerships and deeper investments, I did not see that same diversity represented. And maybe it's a policy question for the council as we invest these dollars, if this is a priority for us and this is something we'd like to see. As an artist, I don't love the narrative. It's not that any of those orgs are not worthy of the investment, but just like with the RDA, how we take care of the niches that the free market doesn't take care of, it feels to me like when we are supplementing a free market investment in the arts, we might want to nurture something different. I know Darren talks about similar things when we put out RFPs through the city to nurture a pipeline of developers and other professionals that aren't necessarily the same thing that's always been represented historically while maintaining quality. I would like to contend that this is a similar place where we could affect change, and I would really love to see us, especially after that legislative recap, talking about how we were going to continue to stand in the gap that was created by certain legislative pieces. I would like to see us maybe be more directed with how we intend for our funds to be used in developing a richer tapestry of diverse arts administrators who actually are sustainable because of our investments.
Yeah, we'd be happy to take that back to the Budget Committee, and there are a lot of really incredible emerging groups of color that this program is serving, and with Spanish ads, we've been so proud of their efforts there, and the committee has their eye on that. And just speaking to the budget and different programs and amplifying, the Arts Council has retired programs that are duplicative of efforts of other entities, and we definitely have our eye on that. We don't do the Brown Bag Concert Series anymore because we know that other service providers are doing things like that, so it's something we carefully watch. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Oh, yes.
And just, I appreciate all the comments and the dialogue here, because it's wonderful, and I just love the excitement. I love the vibrancy and then the energy that's coming out of the three of you, and also what you're projecting into the city. This is awesome stuff, and I love coming downtown at night just to see all that. So thank you very much for the work, and I appreciate all the comments that everybody's been making here on making it even better and exploding. Thank you.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much. Good to see you. All right, we will turn our attention to the temporary closure of 7200 West between Interstate 80 and California Avenue. Ben Ludke from the council office is coming to the table, and he'll be joined by Jorge Chamorro and John Larson.
The ordinance before the council would close approximately 1.5 miles of 7200 West between California Avenue and Interstate 80. The closure would be temporary. It could last up to 2 years or 30 days after the safety concerns are mitigated, whichever comes first. The adjacent property owners have been notified. They submitted letters of support, which are in the transmittal. There are 3 property owners along this stretch. They would retain access to their property during the closure. This stretch of 7200 West is without curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and it is mostly unpaved. State law does require the council to hold a public hearing before voting on the ordinance to authorize the temporary closure. That public hearing is scheduled for next Tuesday, April 2nd. And I'll turn it over to Jorge and John for a presentation.
Good afternoon. This is Jorge Chamorro with Public Services.
I'm John Larson with Transportation.
All right, we have a brief presentation. If you had an opportunity to see the documents attached to the transmittal, it is pretty straightforward why the reason behind this request to temporarily close this stretch of 7200 West. There is just a little bit of synopsis on the next slide, please. As Ben mentioned, this is a temporary closure. We're looking at closing from April of this year and no later than March of 2026. We don't know exactly, but we're expecting that some development in the area will activate this location and deter some of that illegal activity. The early notification process is not required based on an exemption in the code. This is for safety and liability issues, to mitigate liability issues with the city. Property owners have been notified, and public safety in the city will retain access in case something develops over there. Next slide, please. As Ben mentioned, there are 3 main property owners. Largely, the area surrounding the closure is owned by Kennecott, identified in this map with number 2. Number 1 is railroad owned by Union Pacific. And lastly, on the southeast end of the closure, there is Waste Management of Utah. They are concerned about people just dumping hazardous materials on that part of 7200 West. Next slide. The next 3 slides actually are evidence of the impacts of the illegal dumping around this area. the one slide displaying right now, you can see on the left side, there are some large appliances that are dropped in this on the side of the road. And on the right side, there's evidence of a fire not too long ago. Next slide, please. Yep, that's a boat. And a few mattresses. Next slide, please.
Is this mattress apocalypse coming back, Andrew? That's what Andrew called it when he was on the council. Mm-hmm.
All right, and then the last slide. Again, unimproved road is just, it builds up pretty quickly. The transmittal accounts for 2 occasions where city resources were deployed to remove all of this material and dispose of it properly. It gets pretty expensive. So yeah, with that, I don't know, John, do you want to add anything else?
So our involvement in the transportation division has just been just looking at this and figuring out where to close it in a way that people don't get stuck out there in a spot where it's hard to turn around. And then also just, we feel confident that the traffic impacts, the transportation impacts would be very minimal for closing this road.
All right, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
If I'm trying to dump something illegally, what's going to stop me? Are we going to put like barriers up, or how are we like physically closing it? Because it just seems like if I've got a big truck, I could get around a barrier and still dump stuff out there.
Hopefully that's kept to a minimum, but yes, there will be a physical barrier, a swing arm that blocks the extent of the width of the road, and then some to avoid for some driving around. And again, this is completely unimproved, but yes, a large truck, lifted truck, will be able to drive around the barrier and onto private property to dump if they want to do it.
But this would make it a lot harder, and then it also because we have the 2 spots where the barriers will be up. It will make it easier for all of us to kind of track what's happening, and if people want to still dump stuff, maybe north of the barrier, it shortens the area in which they could do that. So it's we don't have to have surveillance on as much of a space. And then the property owners and emergency management folks our public safety people would still be able to, they'd have key to unlock the gate.
Wait, do you have your light on? I can't tell. Oh, no. Okay, go ahead.
I didn't look at the lights. I like that.
Yeah. It kind of looks like it's on, but sorry.
So we're closing it to curb the bad behavior. I love that. I never driven in 7200 over there and that stretch of the road. I don't know if there's that many people that do it for other than dumping. Are we also trying to go pick some of this up, or we're just going to close it and stopping to try to stop more new garbage?
So the last time we did a big cleanup was December of last year. Before we do the closure, we will do another cleanup, removing everything that has built up since December, and then we install the barricades.
So it keeps on growing. It's like since December. Wow. I wonder if there is some signage that we can install and with the law and maybe, I don't know, maybe some scare tactics to prevent and teaching them how you throw the garbage, how do you dispose of actual garbage. I don't know, but thank you for doing that. I wasn't aware of this area, but maybe one day, not to throw anything away, I get to drive through that.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is a follow-up on our retreat, but since our chair had to step out, I think we should take a little break, a roo. How long? Break.
Let's say,
It's in Robert's
let's
rules.
say to reconvene at 5:15, which is the initial time we had kind of set for it, so.
Great, let's do that. 5:15. Thanks, everyone.
It's 5:15 and we're going to reconvene. I'm going to invite Lahua Weaver to the table to facilitate a conversation on the council retreat follow-up. This is something that's come out of the chair, vice chair meetings as a way to make sure that the priorities we set for ourselves at the beginning of the year are periodically revisited, that we're able to reevaluate, especially as new priorities do pop up during the year or new urgencies are given to us by things like legislative sessions and other things, to make sure that we're balancing our attention, but also our staff time, capacity, and all that to its maximum benefit. So this is really supposed to be conversational and interactive. It's meant to help us all. I know sometimes I've said something to either my liaison or a council staff, and like all of a sudden they've dedicated time and energy, and I was like, oh wait, that was an idea. I did not mean for that to get as far as it got. So it's a good chance for us to say, you know what, I know I said that, but maybe that's not as big a priority right now. We can back, you know, for us to just make sure that we're doing our part in not running the staff ragged and making sure that we know that when the 7 of us are in alignment, we have our maximum power as a branch of government. And so making sure that we maintain as strong an alignment as possible. So Lahua, with that, I'll turn the time over to you.
That's perfect. And that was the lion's share of my introduction. So that's great. I'll just add a little bit to that to say, to really emphasize what Victoria mentioned about how much council staff tries to track and keep attention on all of the things that we think might be important to you. But really what we end up doing is having this huge list of priorities, and there may be 100 things on there at any given time. And like Victoria also said, you guys just meant for us to be aware of it, not to actually make it a priority. And so I think this is a little bit of us coming up with what's a better like language around this stuff so that we're all operating on the same understanding. And then for those things that you really do think are priorities and you're like, this is the most important thing, I want to make sure we're making progress on this, how do we as staff help you do that better? Because as you can imagine, and you've all heard us talk about, there are just so many things that play into that. There's staff time, there's all the routine items that we handle, there's coordination with the administration on many of the things that you all are interested in. And so if we could come up with what we're kind of loosely referring to as an action plan to really scope what you want and what it would take to accomplish it, then I think that would be really helpful, and we may all feel like we're making better progress on those things. So we can start however you want, or we can start through talking about all of the priority things that we have listed for you guys. We can look at the retreat attachments that were in the packet, or we could talk about the action plan. Any of those conversations would help us achieve something in the conversation.
Council, do you have a preference for how we proceed? All right, Lahua, do you want to go with?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know Cindy Gus Jensen is joining online, so just wanted to recognize she popped her video on.
Cindy, did you want to jump in? Okay, all right. Yeah, anybody feel free to interrupt.
Is there something most intuitive for staff? Because I think whatever works for you best.
Okay. Sure. I guess what I would suggest is the 2 attachments that were provided in the packet materials today are just from the retreat conversation. It was the items that you all listed in the conversation as opportunities and threats for the city. Obviously, none of those conversations were really specific about a priority, so to speak, but we take all of those things seriously in looking at what are items that are important to council members. In addition to that, we also have the list that this was not provided in the packets. I'll just say we are trying to clean up and consolidate this list, but we also have several lists that include the items that your liaisons are tracking on your behalf in coordination with each of you. We also have items that you have approved during budget discussions, so that obviously that tells us it's a priority because you've put money associated with the project. And then we also have items that you have made that we've talked about during small group meetings or check-in meetings. And Sam Owen on our staff has tried to go through notes from those meetings to just compile another list. So we're going to try and consolidate that into a list that council members can look at and touch and feel and know that we're tracking things for you. And then we could have a little bit better of a priority discussion looking at that list. But I also just wanted to ask if there are priorities that council members have in mind that you're not sure that staff have on a list somewhere, we would take that information now as well. So maybe we could start there and just give a minute for any of that, and if not, then we can move on.
Council, any responses to that? Councilmember Puig.
As a person that has all sorts of random thoughts all the time, and many times are not good thoughts, right? I just want to find out how this works, because, you know, it seems to me that there are some projects that I have that just pop out, that most of the time don't require a lot of money, but they do require quite a bit of coordination between our side of the aisle, the other side of the aisle, and trying to figure out some policy here, or, you know, some process for something. But it wouldn't necessarily require a vote from the council. Maybe if it does, maybe there isn't money allocated, right? That I will have to lobby my colleagues here. But I have a bunch of those, and I always have, and you know, and I wonder, are those things that you need also to like keep? I felt like my liaison helped me keep track of those, and my liaison knows about them for the most part. And if I have an idea, or if he has an idea, we all have an idea. We usually talk to each other, but are those things that need to be discussed as a group every time? If it seems like more cumbersome, but I want to understand what the best process for you and the staff is.
Yeah, I would say my easiest answer is those are definitely not things we want to make more cumbersome. So having a full group conversation is probably not necessary. I think what would be necessary and helpful for those items, and we can identify when, but is to come up with an action plan on what's really being asked and how do we coordinate with the administration to just help ensure everybody's on the same page and there's a path for success for those items.
And how do I make sure that something that I think is simple, sometimes it isn't, because of a million things that could get on the way? Oh. So is there a way that maybe just for the sake of the staff and, you know, everybody's mental health, that we come up with a process for these little teeny projects that says, okay, this is your idea, this is what we think we need to do for this, and you guys already do that, but maybe a little timeline of, if you wish, of steps, and then these are the concerns that we've been brought up. Because at that point, maybe there is a ton of research and a ton of branches that might take a lot of time. And at that point, I need to decide, is this worth it? Or do I need to get more people to support it in this side of the aisle for you to be worth it? Because I feel like maybe some of the projects I have embarked, the staff thought they were simple, but they ended up not. And maybe that was not my intention.
Absolutely, yes. And so I think that's a great point. Even for those smaller to medium-sized projects, we could refine our process to make sure we're doing that for each of them so that you have an immediate feedback loop on here's how this might go. So yes, that's a great suggestion.
It's just that, I just don't want to overwhelm you with random things. I mean, talking about lions and, finding places.
Lion sculptures.
Lion sculptures, no actual lions, lion sculptures.
No, I agree with you too, because I think sometimes I'm like, why is this so cumbersome? And you're like, oh, let me tell you about the 9 departments that have to check this off, and then the legal ramifications, and also you're like, oh, this was, a little part-time job that I handed to a department that has 1 million part-time jobs already.
Well, and admittedly, I think staff would have to confess to sometimes making things more difficult than they need to be, but also underestimating how difficult things need to be. So somehow both things are true. And so you're like, when you say like, oh, hey, could we get this and just have them printed and delivered somewhere? We're like, yes, no problem. Tomorrow we'll do that. And then it's like, actually, that's quite a bit of work. And, so we have that problem. And then you ask what could be a simple thing, and we really blow it up into something that could be. So it would just be even helpful to right size the scope, and we could make that list, and then you all could tell us that's not what I meant at all, and we can refine it. So I think it would be good.
So I think the conceptualization as we've been talking about this, would be on the days where we don't have formal, where we have more flexibility in our work sessions, to spend a little more time going into depth about not just the things from our retreat, which we still need to check in and say, does this continue to be the most pressing of priority, but then also to have kind of a list of the things that pop up, like the times where Alejandro's like, hey, there's a lion sculpture that I want, and I'm like, hey, baseball fees, and all of us are putting our own things into the mix so that we can discuss them. Because of the open meetings, we can't discuss things together outside of public meetings, and sometimes I'll talk to Sarah and I'll include a detail that I forget when I talk to Ava, and it's not efficient for me to do it. So are we kind of at peace? It's not meant to be anything that's punitive, but rather something that is transparent, helps us offer alignment to one another, and especially going into a budget season, I really think it's good prep for us to condition ourselves ready to make, healthy decisions. So if anyone has any feedback for me on the process and how we're going to use this time and use these sorts of check-ins, I would really love that. Councilmember Dugan?
I think that's a great way, because I think in the past we do the council retreat, we all come up with these priorities and all come to the list, and then it's kind of like, oh my God, it's undaunting now what we need to do, because we already had last year's list that still isn't completed, and the previous years, and we continuously add to this thing. So it would be nice to know, like I'll tell my liaison, ask the chair, vice chair. I'm like, well, I know exactly how that's going to go, because there's 1,000 things on there, and there's just another action that I think, this should be simple, and it's not.
No. Right.
I mean, if you just think about the whole plastic bag ban, I mean, we started that when I first joined the council, and don't write that. And Ali, that's already on your list.
Thank you. I almost forgotten.
I know you almost forgot that. So
I already have it.
Right. So I just wanted to, so I think this idea of when we have that open time to kind of try to chip away at some of that stuff. And again, some of it's stuff, just like, there's 1,500 bills and 900 passes, and like some of that stuff is like, that's not our job. We need to kind of go, sorry, we can't take care of that. We can't take care of everything. And we gotta be kind of like almost harsh on that and say, sorry, it's not us. Move on.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Perfect. I would also just like to add, I think this is a piece that will fit into some of your coordination with your liaison as well. We've been talking as a staff about the opportunity for liaisons to really report back to you more regularly about how their workload is being spent, so that you, in conjunction with your liaison, can be resetting priorities and understanding when things need to adjust because of what projects they're working on. And we've talked about it. We've likened it to reviewing that with you, each of you, kind of like they do with your communication budget, where there's a finite amount of money spent, and it means you can't spend $100 more than that. Like, how do we also report back to you how workload is being spent? Because even though it is a little bit more fungible, it's like, it's still pretty finite, like there's just not infinite amount of time in the world. And so just to improve that level of coordination between you and your liaison, I think if we do this right and we make it part of how our office is functioning better, then it will lead to those conversations going well also. So if I could suggest that maybe what we'll do is we'll come back to you all with just some sample scoping documents that could be used, so that when we do have something that needs an action plan, we have a document that we can use and we all think that it's going to work for you. Does that work?
Yes. I am wondering if in that scoping document, if we can call out anything related to financial resources, anything related to policy or like legal resources, and then staff time and involvement. I think kind of seeing it in those three lenses would be helpful. I also think about it through the lens, so sometimes when we want a lion statue, it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, and I don't want to misquote you in terms of like, this is a 1 to 2 hour, or like, just kidding, this is now a 50 hour, you know, like what that looks like. I do wonder about creating, whether it's ranges or categories. Like, we think this is something that we could accomplish within a normal work week. We think this is something that's going to take us like 6 to 8 weeks. We think this is something that's probably 6 to 8 months, you know, or longer than that, just to kind of, I think, also
Like
help.
a hurricane rating scale.
Kind of, yeah. I guess I'm like category 1, category 5. But in terms of thinking about it, just to not necessarily require a level of detail that would be, you know, risky for staff to assert, but also to kind of couch expectations about like, we can work on this. We want to be clear. We're looking at, you know, not seeing an outcome for X amount of time, just so that, again, we're using that to also communicate back to our residents about what can be possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
I can tell you a lot about those lions if you want.
You brought them up. This is what happens when you bring them up. They're the example now for the rest of the conversation.
I think it might be helpful to send out to that chart about the like strength in numbers thing, and I don't know if you're or if not, if you're already thinking about including that in like the documents that you're talking about, then maybe you can hold on to it and send it out. But I refer to that like a couple times a year when I'm thinking about making an ask, and thinking about making an ask of all of you and of staff about, you know, what are the most important things that I want to like use my cred or capital or favors or goodwill or whatever with. And to me, that's a helpful document because I try to think of it like traffic, and when you're in traffic and you're complaining about traffic, but you are traffic. Like we, on the council, I think we have a lot of awesome ideas, and I include myself in this, get frustrated with like, why is this taking so long? Or like, I said this was a priority 2 years ago, and like, this is still happening, but I'm also continuously adding to that list and continuing to add new priorities, and it's kind of analogous, I think. So I appreciate having the reminder too, and I think that we should be, I'm sure I'll regret this at some point, but I think that we should be kind of like forced to rank and prioritize more often. And as a group say, you know, this is what you've said you all want. This is what we have the bandwidth to do. Let's go through and rank these. Because I think it really would help us kind of prioritize in our mind, you know, what we as a group do want to, you know, what are our top tier things, and what are our second tier things, and what are our, it would be nice if, whatever things.
Yeah, and if I could use that and also say, sometimes staff feels like we have to hold on to everything forever.
No.
And so I think that what you just described would also help us say, oh, it's okay that these things have served its purpose and it's gone. It's almost like a little Marie Kondo moment where we think it for its time and then we let it go.
I want you to, I want that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I want to help you get rid of some of those sweaters, you know. And,
Right.
Yeah.
We're not wearing them anymore.
Yeah, they're not bringing joy. They're not sparking joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we go to Cindy, please?
Just a couple of things. Sometimes people wonder, well, why did this happen fast and then this other thing takes a really long time? It helps us to know what everybody's interested in, because there are times when the administration may ask about something, or they may be telling us about something that they're working on, or they may send us a transmittal, and it will just coincide with something that one of the council members had suggested. And they'll oftentimes build the suggestion into what they're already doing, or remember it from a previous discussion, or it can be easily added in the budget, or those types of things. So if there's an easy path that we can either work with the administration on or suggest to you guys, then we're going to do that. So by the same token, there are things that, as you've talked about, we think might be pretty easy, or we might say, well, we could probably get that done in 4 months or whatever. But then a legislative session as bad as this last one happens in terms of the volume of bills, or we have a situation where we need to get a lot of work done before September, or any number of things, or we need to do a couple of community meetings that are important to do at a certain time. So those things all impact it, and that's why when we say when we give you a guess on how much time something would take, I can tell you ahead of time we'll be wrong. We'll be trying really hard, but we'll be wrong.
Thank you, Cindy. Council, any other comments? Lehua? All right, so I'm excited for this, for a chance for us to be efficient with how we use our time and staff's time. Thank you, Lehua. All right, let's turn to our board appointments. Kristen Lavalette, did I say that right? Should be online for an appointment to the Business Advisory Board.
Good evening, and yes, you sure did say that correctly. Thank you.
Perfect. Kristen, so usually we just give people a minute or two to tell us a little bit about themselves and why they're interested in this role. So we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. So I am the Business Development Manager at the Downtown Alliance, and I have actually served on the Business Advisory Board previously when I was the Director of Local First Utah. So this will be my second term on the Business Advisory Board. I work with predominantly small and local businesses who are within District 4 and the Downtown Alliance's boundaries, and I feel like being connected through economic development and the board itself is a great way, both not only to make sure that we're adequately representing the needs of downtown's businesses, but also making sure that our little world stays connected to the rest of Salt Lake City.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Council, any questions, comments, concerns? Mark? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say I've worked with Kristen for many years. I'm really appreciative that she applied and has been nominated for this. So I would ask the council for support. And Kristen, thank you for your work with Downtown Alliance and caring for our city, and in particular our business community, which needs advocates like you on this board. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Kristen, thank you so much. We don't take lightly that people do this voluntarily in service to our community, and so thank you for lending your expertise, your time, your energy. We will put you on our consent agenda, which will be voted on during our formal meeting. You don't need to be present, but thank you so much for your time, energy, and insights.
Wonderful. Thank you as well.
Okay, so council, we are going to, report of the chair and vice chair. Anything, vice chair?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Should I ask now for my thing? Or do you want to do it? Okay, then let's go to the report and announcement of the executive director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a check-in on an approval for travel. We do this for any travel that comes up that's not pre-approved. The Smith Entertainment Group invited the council chair to tour a sports and entertainment district that surrounds a NHL NBA site in Los Angeles. So we were just checking to see if the council is supportive of paying for that travel for the council chair.
I am.
Yes.
And can I make a comment? Sorry, did we skip over that, or did I? I was focused on something else. Well, I just wanted to say, during your travels, I'd love if you explore what does it look like for stadiums to have other investment and development nearby. I think it'd be interesting to see all the other opportunities in this type of ecosystem that we're trying to build. And I'm so excited that you're going with the mayor, and we're super supportive of your travels. So have fun, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's also an aye.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Then we are moving into a closed session now for the purpose of discussion regarding the deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems and attorney-client matters. Correct?
Madam Chair, I move that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing deployment of security devices and receiving advice of counsel.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Wharton, a second from Councilmember Pui. When we adjourn from closed session, we will be adjourned from the work session as well. I'll roll call the vote. Dugan?
Yes.
Lopez Chavez?
Aye.
Wharton?
Aye.
Pui?
Yes.
Mono?
Aye.
Young?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. That is unanimous. We will move to closed session.